allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll now move on to proclamations and recognitions. We have several: America Recycles Day, Municipal Government Works, Pancreatic Cancer Awareness, Small Business Saturday, as well as World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims. Colleagues, let's move to the podium.
Good evening, everybody. I am honored this evening to give the proclamation for America Recycles Day. It was a couple days ago, but that's okay because here in Rockville, every day is Recycling Day. So, whereas to highlight the environmental and community benefits of recycling, businesses, industries, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, and individuals have all joined together to celebrate America Recycles Day. And all those organizations will encourage their employees, customers, membership, and residents to pledge to reduce waste and buy more recycled content. And whereas Rockville residents generated more than 10,168 tons of refuse in fiscal year 2024, and Rockville residents recycled 4,044 tons of materials in the fiscal year 2024 through the city's convenient single-stream recycling program, and composted or mulched an additional, 3,628 tons of organic yard waste and 108 tons of food compost. And whereas Rockville's residential recycling rate was 43% in fiscal year 2024, now therefore, the Mayor and Council of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim November 15th, 2024, as America Recycles Day in the city of Rockville. We call upon all residents to recycle as much as possible and spread the word about the need to reduce waste by reusing, recycling, composting, and buying recycled products. I move the proclamation.
Moved and seconded by Dr. Miles. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
And we have our own environmental. She runs our amazing recycling program here in Rockville. Erica Shingauer, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you all members of our community that recycle, and special thanks to all our team and the crews that work every day collecting all these tons of materials for our community. And just a quick plug that we opened our third food waste compost drop-off station at Twinbrook Community Center, so we welcome you to participate. We also have compost stations at the Senior Center and at the Rockville Maintenance Facility. So thank you and keep recycling.
Thank you so much.
Picture.
Oh, we got a picture.
Don't get away that easy.
I know.
Seemed like it was going to get on the platform.
Thank you so much.
This is Councilmember Jackson, it's me, right?
You're doing
I thought it was municipal government, right?
municipal government.
Yeah, I'm just making sure. Okay. All right, I've got the pleasure to talk about municipal government and how well it works and how we're celebrating that this month. Before I do so, though, I think it's important to recognize those who help make our municipal government work. So I would ask that anybody who's either an employee of our municipal government, whether through the police department or city hall or any other department, or serves on any boards or commissions in the city of Rockville, to please stand. If you're able to. Thank you. You are all what makes municipal government work. Whereas Maryland is home to 156 other municipalities, and whereas municipal government represents the most responsive form of government, with individuals being able to directly access their elected officials. And whereas in an effort to educate the residents on what municipal government is all about, and the needs for involvement, the city of Rockville is proud to promote municipal government awareness. And now, therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby join the Maryland Municipal League in declaring the month of November 2024 as a Municipal Government Works Month in Rockville, Maryland, and call upon the people of Rockville to join others across the United States in recognizing and participating in this special observance. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Councilmember Shaw, seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Do we have someone from Rockville? We have Barack Matite to come and accept and say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On behalf of all the city employees, we thank you for passing this proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy leaves.
No picture.
Judy's running down. We appreciate our municipal employees. Thank you.
Thanks, Barack.
Dr. Miles, you're next.
Step on Dr. Miles.
Good evening again. I have the solemn responsibility of reading this proclamation about Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. Like many of these proclamations, this one hits close to home. I lost my grandfather to pancreatic cancer shortly after starting my first run for city council back in 2019. It's a vicious disease. It takes folks quick. And perhaps you may not know of anybody directly who has contracted or dealt with pancreatic cancer, but a lot of y'all watch Jeopardy, and you remember Alex Trebek also dealt with it too. We have city employees. I recently learned an uncle of mine this past weekend's in hospice because of it. So sober, but I'm glad that we are taking a moment to recognize it. Whereas Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month is recognized each November as a time to bring understanding and response to the disease and individuals and families affected by it. And whereas pancreatic cancer is the fourth leading cause of cancer death in the United States. In 2024, more than 66,000 Americans are expected to be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer here in the United States, and nearly 50,000 will die from the disease. And whereas currently there unfortunately is no cure for pancreatic cancer, there have been no significant improvements in survival rates in the past nearly 50 years. When symptoms of pancreatic cancer present themselves, it is usually too late for an optimistic prognosis. Pancreatic cancer accounts for about 3% of all cancers in the United States and about 7% of all cancer deaths, and is slightly more common in men than in women. Now, therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim November 2024 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month and call upon the people of Rockville to join their fellow residents in the community and across the region to participate in raising awareness and moving towards finding a cure. With that, Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Councilmember Jackson, seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
All right. I don't know that we have anybody here to receive it.
It was you.
Oh, was it me? Oh, it's all good. I'll step aside, but thank you all for this proclamation.
All right. I have the honor of proclaiming Small Business Saturday. Whereas the city of Rockville, Maryland celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 33.2 million small businesses in the United States, which represent 99.9% of all businesses with employees in the United States. And whereas small businesses employ 46.8% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, and whereas small businesses have a positive impact on their community by creating jobs, contributing to local charities, organizing and sponsoring local events within their community. Now, therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim November 30th, 2024, as Small Business Saturday, and urge the Rockville community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants during this day and throughout the year. And I believe we have Margie Graff with the Rockville Chamber of Commerce. But first, Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Councilmember Larry seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. Good evening, Mayor Ashton, members of the council. It is both an honor and privilege to accept this citation on behalf of the Greater Rockville Chamber of Commerce in celebration of Small Business Saturday. On behalf of our board, our members, and the entire business community, I'd like to express our heartfelt gratitude to the Mayor and Council for this recognition. This citation is not just a reflection of the hard work and resilience of our small businesses, but also a testament to the power of community collaboration. Small businesses are the backbone of our local economy. They create jobs, contribute to the vibrancy of our neighborhoods, and provide personalized services that large corporations simply cannot replicate. Today, as we celebrate small business all the time, not just on the 30th, we are reminded of how much these businesses contribute, not just in terms of economics, but in the sense of pride and identity they help create in our community. We are fortunate to live in a community where the value of small businesses is recognized and supported at every level. The Chamber of Commerce plays a crucial role in this by advocating for local businesses, offering valuable resources, and fostering a spirit of partnership among business owners. We are grateful to work alongside so many passionate entrepreneurs who dedicate themselves to making this community a better place to live, work, and shop. To the Mayor and Council, thank you for your ongoing support of small businesses and for this recognition today. Your commitment helps ensure that our local economy remains strong and sustainable for future generations. For every $100 spent at a locally owned business, $68 stays in the community. Finally, to the many customers and residents who continue to choose to shop local and support local businesses, we thank you. Your support is what makes days like today possible, and we couldn't do it without you. We are excited to continue working together with all of you to strengthen our community and grow our local businesses. Thank you again to the Mayor and Council and everyone here today. We are proud to represent the small businesses that make this community unique, and we look forward to many, many more years of collaboration and success.
I have the honor this evening to read the proclamation on the World Day of Remembrance for victims of road traffic incidents. Part of my story of how I got here was a woman who was killed on a residential street in Twin Brook. She was crossing a residential street on a sunny day in the daytime, simply going to work. And so I always think of her on this day and on every day that I work on pedestrian safety. Whereas the Global Status Report on Road Safety, launched by the World Health Organization in December 2018, found that road traffic injuries are now the leading killer of people ages 5 to 29. And whereas more than half of all road traffic deaths are among vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists. And whereas every year, the objectives of World Day of Remembrance are to provide a platform for road traffic victims and their families, to remember all people killed and seriously injured on the roads, acknowledge the crucial work of the emergency services, draw attention to the generally trivial legal response to culpable road deaths and injuries, and advocate for an appropriately serious response. Advocate for better support for road traffic victims and their families, and to promote evidence-based actions to prevent and eventually stop further road traffic deaths and injuries. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of Rockville, Maryland do hereby proclaim November 17th, 2024 as World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims, and encourage everyone in Rockville to acknowledge and remember the victims of road traffic incidents, and to take safety precautions when driving on or crossing roads. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Seconded by Councilmember Fulton. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
And to accept the proclamation, we have the Chair of the Transportation Mobility Commission, Kathleen Kleinman.
All right. I just want you to know you have community members that are focused on this issue, but we need help. We're in a recruitment phase, and anyone who has been touched by these experiences, we're looking for you to join us either through a public comment period or as an actual member working on trying to advise the city on how to prevent these traffic deaths and accidents, and how Rockville can change its ways and its procedures so that these don't continue into the future, especially at the rate that they're going now. We know we have a Vision Zero, and it depends on everybody in all departments of the city to focus in on this issue as part of their work. But we need help. So I'm want to mention we are recruiting for the Bicycle Advisory Committee, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and the Transportation and Mobility Commission itself. So please, look, if you have a personal interest in this, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much.
Take this off.
This way or which way?
We'll follow you.
Yeah. You're the popular one.
There you go. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for their patience. We normally have, by our new tradition, of starting those at the beginning of the month. However, we moved the November 4th meeting because we wanted to give everyone a chance to volunteer and vote and get out the vote activities the night before. So that's why it's a little bit more crunched today, and we appreciate your patience. Next, we'll move on to agenda review.
Madam Mayor and council members, we did revise the agenda online today. We included the new appointments for the boards and commissions. We added a consent item of approval of minutes, and we also added the work session PowerPoint presentation for the housing agenda item. And everything's been updated online.
Thank you. That is fantastic. We appreciate that. Any questions? Okay. I will note just one unusual thing. So we have a public hearing starting at 7:50, and we will go through with community forum, and then we'll pause at 7:50 for the advertised public hearing time, and then we'll come back to allow more people a chance to speak. So we want to make sure we're giving everyone a chance to make their voices heard. All right. City Manager's report.
Mayor Ashton, members of City Council, good evening. I have a couple of bits of good news. First is we've been receiving some funding and loans from outside sources that are helping us move forward with a number of infrastructure projects. The water main rehabilitation improvement project in the Twinbrook neighborhood received a loan of $2.5 million. The lead and service line inventory investigation project will receive a loan of over $500,000. And our LED streetlight conversion project will receive funding now of up to $300,000. So it's great to move forward with those projects, and it's even better when we can use outside resources of funding. Now, one more announcement. This is a big one. It's kind of cool. Congratulations to the Rockville Montgomery Swim Club. This is a joint club recreation program offered by the City of Rockville and Montgomery County. The swim club was named the #9 swim team in the whole United States in 2024 and is recognized as a gold member club by USA Swimming for the second consecutive year. This means that the club is rated as being in the top 1% in the entire country. Kind of tells you why we have so many Olympic swimmers running around, but that's really exciting. So congratulations to all the swimmers and all the coaches in that amazing club. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. If we were to put them in a room, this room would be quite full. It's a nice big team. I was also just going to note our Richard Montgomery volleyball team won state champions second year in a row. So our young people are doing really, really strong things. Any questions for the city manager? Okay. We'll now move on to boards and commissions appointments and reappointments. We do have 2 commissions. Who would like to proceed? Councilmember Shaw.
I move to approve a new appointment of Nikolai Rakhilan to the Landlord Tenant Affairs Commission to serve a full 3-year term until November 1st, 2027.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And Ms. Taylor Farrell, that was Councilmember Jackson. Okay, thank you. Next, we have a motion to approve the Youth Commission nomination. Councilmember Valeri.
I move to approve a new appointment of Elijah Noda to the Youth Commission to serve a 1-year term until November 1st, 2025.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Fulton. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you to our new commissioners. We're now going to be moving on to community forum. All persons addressing the mayor and council shall speak in a civil and courteous manner. Please direct your comments to us and be respectful of others in the community. Each person is allowed 3 minutes, and we ask that you stick to the 3 minutes allowed. There will be a time clock in front of you, and you will hear an audible beep at the end of your 3 minutes. Please state your name and whether you live in the city of Rockville for the record. I also want to note that because of the topic tonight, we have asked staff to have a housing specialist on hand. So if anyone wants to talk to a city housing specialist, we do have that support here for you. And I know that Mr. Mihaela can help direct you to that. If anyone wants help, Jeff, do you want to just share what they should do?
Raise your hand and Trevor will come and have a chat.
Okay, so raise your hand or go to the back of the room and Trevor will come back and help you. We also have a translation support if needed. 20 minutes is allocated for community forum. However, we know that there's a large crowd today, and so we will come back at 7:50. We'll start the public hearing and then come back to community forum. If anyone needs specific ADA requests, we ask that you share those with the city manager, and he can help address those issues, ideally in advance, but if you need to, please see him as well. Just wanted to note we are very interested in hearing from you. Let's all remember that we should listen as friends and neighbors and allies, even when we disagree. It's important for all of us to create an environment of mutual respect and understanding. Let's also create a safe environment for everyone to speak comfortably. With this in mind, please no booing. Make sure that none of the signs are blocking your neighbor, if there are any. And thank you for being here. All right. So I will call, and I believe there are 3 sign-up sheets. Ms. Penny, do you have the first list for me? I'll take it. While she's doing that, just to note, there is a sign-up sheet for community forum, and there are 2 public hearing sign-up sheets. So if you think you've signed the wrong one, just let her know. The first person is Ms. Sherry Cook. Do we have Sherry Cook here? Welcome.
like, hello, good evening. Thank you to the mayor and council for the opportunity to share with you again. Thank you for recognizing pancreatic cancer. I work at the National Cancer Institute, so we definitely want to make sure that we bring those awarenesses to our community whenever we have the opportunity. I wanted to come and say that I'm a King Farm resident, and I do disagree with the council removing the conversation on the agenda around rent stabilization. I had a conversation with a community member, an elderly lady, over the weekend, and lost her husband suddenly in July, and is really now wondering, what is she supposed to do with her life? I believe in being the voice for the voiceless. I believe in showing up in places where other people don't have an opportunity. I believe in making sure that our voices are heard, because voters' voices do matter. Number one, want to fight for rent stabilization because I understand I was a homeowner and we also have property that we rent. But I would never want anyone to be in a compromising position to ever have to wonder, what are they going to do tomorrow? Sometimes we take for granted that because we own homes and that we don't have to worry about those things, that everyone else doesn't matter. But the thing is that we do. My voice matters. Their voice matters. But guess what? So does their vote. So we know that I want to urge you all to please consider putting it back on the agenda, but not just putting it on the agenda, but really considering the people that you're supporting, the people that you sit in these seats, and, for the residents of Rockville. I've said it before, I think it's sad that the city of Rockville tenants still have to come in front of people to just ask for consideration. I thought we got past that. Maybe not. But it's okay, because I want to stand here to encourage each and every one of the residents to keep speaking, to keep coming, to keep showing up, to keep saying what matters. I want to keep them encouraged. I'm going to keep them motivated to keep coming out, because our voices matter. So thank you for letting me speak. I enjoy my time and listening. And if you have any questions for me, you can always reach out to me. I'm Sherry Cook. I'm a King Farm resident, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Fallick.
Hi
David
again.
Fallick. Yes, how are you?
Fine, yourself. So I'm going to give a very brief history, then a simple, polite request. So since November 2022, my rent in my small, poorly constructed apartment has increased more than $300. So I'm paying more than $3,600 a year, more than I was before my lease renewed in November 2022. Since January, February 2023, I've been coming here, asking for relief and protection in the form of mandatory limits on rent increases. I started with the previous city council and mayor. In May 2023, I had the pleasure of talking to various candidates, one for mayor and at least two for city council at the hometown holidays. They had tables set up and tents, and that was really great. And thanks for speaking with me. And my main topic with the people I talked to was this issue, putting limits on rent increases. The 1.1% that the council had, whew, that was great. Rent increase of $24. And I didn't have to get all anxious and scared about how much it was. And so the candidates I spoke with, of the three, two of them agreed and told me that they supported a limit, that they agreed with, they supported what I was saying. And those candidates were the Honorable Ms. Valeri and Mr. Van Grack. Thank you very much for talking with me that day. However, on July 8th, 5 people voted against the limits on rent increases. and 2 people voted to help us out. So I respectfully ask that the candidates I spoke with before the election, who told me they supported limits on rent increases, to join Ms. Shaw, Dr. Miles, and pass the relief and protection that we need, the thousands of Rockville renters need in order to be able to afford shelter and use government positions to serve and protect constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Erin Adams. And I can't believe, Wendy Murphy might be next. Is that right? Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erin Adams, and I'm a tenant of the King Farm neighborhood. I want to thank the mayor and the city council for holding the session today on house stabilization, as it is of great importance to a lot of people in this community. However, I want to express my deep disappointment with the lack of discussion about the kind of stabilization that matters to all of us, and that is rent stabilization. I have been moving around the United States for the entirety of my adult years for schooling and training as a research scientist. Rockville is the 5th city in the 4th state that I have called home. However, it is very special to me because this is the first city that I have decided will be a long-term, hopefully permanent place where I can live. And when people ask me if I'm wanting to stay here long-term, my answer is always yes, but the one thing that will push me out of this area is the cost of living. I understand that you guys do not control the broader markets that affect the cost of living here in this region of the United States. However, you do wield some remarkable power to make a change right here in our community and pass rent stabilization for Rockville residents. If you're not willing to pass it, I, for one, would just love to hear your reasoning for it. I'm open to hearing why you're against it. Although the solutions for affordable housing that you have discussed so far are notable, leaving rent stabilization out of this conversation is like taking a car to a mechanic who refuses to lift the hood. It's simple and it's basic. The middle class, which classifies most Rockville residents, is being totally left out of this conversation. I really care. My own work it has often focused on people who are living below the federal poverty line, but I don't have to give you an economic lesson on why the middle class also matters. Although I am not here to represent the agency that I work for in the federal government, I do want to mention our current situation. As you know, with changes in administration, there are often shakeups that can affect federal workers' lives and well-being. The next administration has promised that many federal workers will see changes in their employment protections that they've had for decades. Given that Rockville and King Farm, for example, is home to many federal workers, this issue of rent stabilization is urgent. You can send a message to civil servants in your community that you care about their livelihood and you want them to remain in the area. I leave you with one note. I do not have developer money or influence, but I do have a vote, and I still believe in the power of a vote. I also believe in the power of my fellow tenants whose numbers and voices are rising. In the near future, I will be more than happy to vote for the members of this council who demonstrate that they hear our voices by at least putting rent stabilization, back on the agenda. Thank you to Councilmember Shaw and Councilmember Dr. Miles for your support in this thus far. I really do hope that I'm able to thank more names on this council in the near future.
Thank you. Welcome, Wendy Murphy, followed by Rashida.
Hi, my name is Wendy Murphy, and I'm a resident of Rockville, King Farm. I strongly support rent stabilization, and I want it back in discussion. I don't understand why it was removed. I was deeply disappointed by the decision on July 8th. I was here when Mayor Ashton and council members Fulton, Jackson, Valeri, and Van Grack rejected discussing rent stabilization. Doesn't make sense to me. I urge you to reconsider this short-sighted decision and immediately put rent stabilization back on the agenda. A lot of Rockville residents or renters, my personal status changed overnight, and I am not the only one. This happens to a lot of people where unanticipated things occur. And rent stabilization is something we should be able to count on, that we can stay where we live. We moved to Rockville confident that we could remain here as we aged, and now we're not sure. And rent stabilization would be a huge step in that direction. Renters are the backbone of Rockville. Nearly half of our population should not continue to live in fear of whether they're going to afford it tomorrow or not. Moving's expensive. Moving is difficult. Finding another place, you have to pay more to get in. Getting assistance is all well and good. One-time assistance, first of all, is typically a little too late and hard to ask for. So let's demonstrate that Rockville values stability, diversity, and housing security for all its residents. And can you please all join Ms. Shaw and Dr. Miles and support discussion of rent stabilization. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have Rashida Lee. Okay. Ebony Cox.
Hello, everyone. Hi, council members.
Hi.
My name is Ebony Cox. I am with Housing Justice of Montgomery County. We really would love for you all to take in consideration of stabilization here in Rockville or the state of Maryland. I'm not sure which, Rockville's city limits or whatnot. But however, I am a resident here. I've been in Montgomery County for a while. I did leave, come back. And I do plan to live here as long as God allowed me to live here. But I won't be able to do that with the rent being $3,000 and up. Right now, a one-bedroom is already at $2,230. And it is a lot on one person. And we just really would just hear us out and kind of understand us, where we're coming from, kind of put yourselves in our shoes and, determine the decision of the stabilization. If you don't pass it, it's going to go up. And these management companies, they're going to do whatever they want to do, which they're already doing now. And this is Rockville, the city of Rockville. You have your own rules and laws and regulations here. It's just giving them an opportunity to say, oh, forget federal, district, and state laws. We're going to do whatever we want to do. If I am, as a resident, have to follow rules and regulations of the state, the city of Rockville, why can't management company do the same? And with this stabilization, it's going to be hard, and it's going to bring more problems to the community. It's going to put a strain on it's already a strain now with homeless folks. The shelters are already getting overcapacitated. And from my understanding, there's a lot more homes to put it's more homes that are not occupied than it is people that are in shelters or living on the street. And it's going to get devastating. It's going to be, it's really going to be a mental issue. It's going to be a housing situation, a housing issue. And if this continues, we're going to have people that are homeless and in a mental state, defecating all over the streets and stuff. And we don't want that in our city of Rockville, So I just please ask that you guys will just really sit down, agree to disagree, and understand where we as the citizen are coming from, because we need better living, and we need stabilization. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize if I mispronounce this. Is there Hui Yun Mu?
Yes, ma'am.
Mao? And then Nicole. Welcome.
It's a fantastic honor to speak to you guys today. My plan, honestly, is to join the military to hopefully buy enough unoccupied land in the middle of the United States so that people can bring back green housing and herbal remedies, which is a main point. I went to college and I found out that America cannot sell any sustainable commodity except for biochemistry products. I only know that in Mandarin, and honestly, I wish there's more people learning Chinese. There are 2 wars going on. I don't know who is going to be the next target. Maybe Russia could work with China to bomb the United States. Maybe the capital isn't settled. the capital could change. A lot of things could change during war. Turns out we only get 1 in 1,000% of Americans working in software, only even less in cybersecurity. I'm not sure how safe the network's not gonna be, but all I know is that those foreigners who are not Americans, they envy us for the life that we had. And they want us dead for it so that they can have our things. There are a lot of people living in very poor places, and I'm not sure they can be reasoned with. I would try to work with them and still try not to get killed. My only wish to you guys is not to beat the market, but to just honestly survive it. If there's any program that we can came up to just buy the unoccupied land in the United States and hire the homeless, the disabled, to simply work in the greenhouse, at least we still get more people who's more willing to stand against another invasion against America as a whole, because once America is in pieces, there's no safe net. The safe net doesn't exist. There's your bank information can be leaked, your facial and your fingerprints is already leaked. There's no privacy on the internet, and I just hope the United States doesn't have to be in somewhere worse than China. I hope it can be something that stands. I wasn't asking for rent stability. I was just asking for the people get a job and a place to live. And the only thing that I can came up with is to buy the unoccupied land and hire people to build greenhouse and advocate more biochem products. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Welcome, Nicole.
Good evening. Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I stand here in representation of my family. I have children, and as well as the community. Also, I can relate to having housing and then have it taken, and you don't, with the cost of, with the rates, or right now we're at a 53% raise in Montgomery County for homelessness, which is not okay. So that should let you know that we need to do something better. So I'm hoping that you would really reconsider everything and just look at our community right now. We have the opportunity to help it to improve. And if we could work together to help our community be better and take care of our community and our children, because our children matter and they're our future, and they need to have a stable house to live in for their mental health purposes as well. And it would also help to cure the lack of food that we also have right now that's going on. So that would help their mental health as well as cure the food deficit as well. And having rent stabilization would help, and it would stop families from being broken up. Instead of dividing the families, it would unite families, and it would keep landlords from raising rents to astronomical prices that people cannot afford. So this would help everyone, even people who are trying to rebuild credit, people who have lost jobs or employment, people that, I don't know if it sound like you can't hear me anymore, but I hope you can hear me. Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. But it would also help the people the young adults that are graduating from college and they need their own housing. So how can they live in this area in the community that their grandparents grew up in? So we have to consider that as well. So our grandparents and ancestors fought very hard for us to raise our family in the community, so we can have a legacy and a history and have small businesses as well. So if you could please reconsider and just we want rental stabilization, because it's really needed right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome, Rabita Moses.
Good evening. I was glad to be back here, but not for rent stabilization. It's been 9 months that I've been testifying. I'm going to request ADA accommodation under Title II for double time. My name is Rabita Moses. I want to thank Zola Shaw and Councilmember David Miles for supporting his rent stabilization. As a concerned resident, I want to bring attention to the role of Maryland Affordable Housing PAC in shaping local housing policy and its concerning alignment with developer interests. This PAC, which supported Mayor Monique Ashton and Councilmember Valeri in their campaigns, has clear tied to developers who profit from rising rents and oppose tenant protections like rent stabilization. While the Maryland Affordable Housing PAC claims to advocate for housing solution, its actions and funding sources reveal a different agenda. One that prioritizes profit over people by financing campaigns for local officials. This PAC has significant influence over decisions that directly impact renters. Developers and property manager companies who often fund such PACs have a vested interest in maximizing profits by opposing policies like rent stabilization that protect tenants from predatory rent increases. Mayor Ashton and Councilmember Valeri, your association with the PAC raises serious concerns. Just give me a minute, please. Your alignment with the developer-backed interest suggests that their policies are prioritizing low-income families, seniors, the Black community, other people of color, and people with disabilities. The council has an obligation to represent the interests of its constituents, not those of powerful PACs and developers. Rejecting rent stabilization only furthers the financial interest of those who have historically benefited from them, from the exploitation of renters, perpetuating inequality and housing instability. I urge you to stand with the residents of Rockville, not the developers and their lobbyists, by supporting rent stabilization. Another thing I want to say is here is the Maryland Affordable PAC that supported the four of you that are sitting here in front of us. You're waging war on your own community members, like Israel is waging war on Gaza. And what I want to say is, you don't care about the Black community, you don't care about the marginalized community, and we will have tenants rise and run against you. Thank you for letting me share. We will vote you out.
Thank you very much. Just to publicly correct the record, I did not receive, and I know other colleagues may want to as well, receive any funding from any PAC. Councilmember Van Grack.
Yeah, I'll also add, I received no money from any PAC in regards to the election whatsoever.
Councilmember Valeri.
I received no money from any developer. My financial report is online on the city's website, and in fact, I raised the least amount of everybody on this dais.
Thank you. All right, welcome Jamie N.
Guys, PAC sent out mailers on behalf of them. It's online.
Thank you. We're going to call order to this. Feel free to continue outside.
Hi there. My name is Jamie. I was born and raised in Montgomery County, and now I live in Rockville and I work in Rockville. I work at Shady Grove Medical Center doing mental health research. So I have a couple questions for you. And if you can, they're yes/no questions. So if you can shake your head yes or no in response to them, I'd greatly appreciate it. For my first question, do you feel that part of your job as mayor and council members is to advocate for the people of Rockville and act in their beneficients?
Just note that we're happy to connect afterwards if you'd like to talk through these questions.
I would rather have them answer now. It's a yes or no question, please. If not, I can answer on what I feel like the appropriate answer is and what I think that your constituents would feel.
Please feel free to testify.
Okay, so yes, it is part of your job to act in the beneficients of Rockville town, of just Rockville residents? And my next question is, do you consider the people who rent houses and live in Rockville as part of your constituent demographic? The answer is yes. Do you feel rent stabilization would decrease the economic hardship of your constituents? The answer is yes. So do you feel, based on the series of questioning and the logical reasoning behind it, do you feel you are doing a good job protecting your constituents from predatory renting agencies? The answer is no. Because you did not pass rent stabilization or continue the discussion of it on July 8th. You're protecting greedy leasing agencies that are engaging in price monopolies and contributing to the economic hardships of the people you're supposed to advocate for. And when your term is up, the people of Rockville will remember who voted no to affirming rent stabilization. Thank you to the council members and other Rockville residents who are in support of rent stabilization, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Welcome Natasha James, followed by Jacqueline B. Okay. Are you Natasha or Jacqueline?
I'm Jacqueline.
Okay. If
Can I
Natasha's here,
pull this
please
down?
feel free to you can actually pull it down. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, sure. Okay, so for instance, I remember you before you became part of this, you were with your son. I was in my grandmother's neighborhood, and before my life changed dramatically. But that's for instance, walking around in a good neighborhood, comfortable neighborhood, loving people, right? Anyways, I was born and raised in this area in Montgomery County, and I grew up, really family oriented. And this county used to be very family oriented. We used to have more community events. I was on swim team my whole childhood. Someone just now got my record like 3 years ago. So that's pretty cool because I was, oh, that's Jackie Voigt, I was one heck of a swimmer. But as it follows, when I was saying that this is a family-oriented place, it used to be. But now I'm saying it's not. It is destroying mine. They took my baby when I lost housing, and I haven't been able to get her back yet because I don't have anywhere to go. There's no programs. And it's not right because that's the only reason I don't have her. And I don't feel like that's a good enough reason to take someone's child, especially when I have 8 years clean, and I'm not going to say it's been easy. It's been really hard, but no one can take that from me. All I'm asking is that you guys can only imagine how I feel. The sleepless nights, the devastating days. Most of all, I'm missing out on her childhood, and she's my last baby ever. I medically could not have another. And I already raised 2 other kids in this county as well. And, all I can say is I want the old Montgomery County back. That's what it used to be about, families being together and loving each other and looking at your neighbor, seeing if they need your assistance. It's supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to be vengeful and evil. Or greed, yes. No greed, But all I can say is that this county removed my baby because I didn't have stability. And I understand that that's temporary, okay? It's a situation. But they are acting as if I'm the bad one here. And I've been doing everything I'm supposed to be doing for the past 2 years. I do random UAs weekly. I go to 12-hour-a-week groups. And, not even just that, not seeing my baby enough. 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week. Anyways, all I'm asking is to please find it in your hearts for people like me. Please. I want to be out of purgatory. That's what I feel I'm in. It's delaying my life. I could have been already a substance abuse counselor. I would like to be able to start, but I have to have stability in order to do that. I'm also learning disabled, so school's going to be hard for me, but if I'm passionate about something, I will do well at it. Okay? And I want to help people that are going through the same disease as me. There's ones that are not here to speak, and I'm one of the blessed ones. I am very blessed to be here. And if it's anyone that could, help others, it's me with that. I don't believe people have the right to remove your child, though. It's not right.
Thank
Especially.
you. Thank you for your testimony.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you sharing your story. And I
Thank
also
you.
just wanted to remind folks that if anyone needs help or wants to talk to someone on staff as an advocate, we do have someone here. Trevor, if you would raise your hand, please, just so people know. And we have Spanish language support if anyone needs that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I can't quite read some of the handwriting, so I really apologize. I think it's Geraldine. Is there a Gerald?
Yes, that's
Okay, thank you.
I am Geraldine James.
Thank
I
you.
am here this evening. I'm advocating for rent control. It's very hard for me. I am a senior, and right now I am in a shelter. My husband come down with dementia. So first of all, we had to find a home, a stable place for him to stay. And we had to go way down in Virginia to find that, something that was affordable. And once we got him there, they're taking all of his Social Security. As a matter of fact, if we didn't find one that would cover his amount would be covered, then they would take some of my money, my Social Security. But I thank God we did find something that he could stay in. But right now I'm on one income, which is my Social Security. And I have been used to two, and it's very hard to find affordable housing. And I just hoped that seniors could be given a little bit of priority anyway. But right now, I haven't received this. And I've called around many places asking for some type of rent control for a senior. But I have not run into anything that has an open list. They are all filled up and don't know when the list would be open within the next 3 or 4 years. And I'm hoping that right now the shelter that I'm staying in, they're trying to get me work so that I can help myself move out on my own, but we still haven't accomplished that yet. And the shelter that I'm staying in is not really doing that much support. They are saying that there are certain people that come first, but there are some people that are last. And it seems like I'm one of the ones who come last. So I am definitely advocating for rent control so that I can live out on my own again. I would really be thankful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to note for Mr. Stevens, Trevor Stevens is outside. He does have access to some list of places that do have units. So I just wanted to flag that if anyone would like to talk to him, again, he's available. I did see him step right outside if you would like to talk to him. And okay, we have someone else in the back. Okay. Chris Stepanek? Madden? Chris Madden? Okay.
Hello, my name is Christopher Madden. I am a King Farm resident, and I'm very concerned about the state of rent stabilization. I am very disappointed that this council voted to take it off of the agenda because I believe it is a very useful and way to help the housing crisis here in Rockville. When I talk to my neighbors, they're very worried about their rent going up. They have their next door neighbors have had their rents go up 40% and they have to move because they cannot afford such a radical increase. And so I'm slowly, bit by bit, losing neighbors to my property management jacking up prices that are completely unreasonable. So I please urge you to put rent stabilization back on the agenda and pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. Gladys Lyons. Gladys Lyons, followed by Liliana Escalante. Okay. Anna Mina. Do we have an Anna Mina?
Gladys is here.
Okay. Gladys Lyons, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Gladys Lyons, and I live at 209 Ashley Avenue in Rockville. I'm concerned about Stone Street in Ashley. There are so many cars being parked, I can hardly get in my driveway. I am 86 years old. I'm a senior, and it's very difficult. There are trucks, cars, everything. I realize at the end of Stone Street, it's a business district near the metro. I realize that. But after you pass the school, Lincoln High School, some of you don't know, that's one of my schools, okay? After you pass that, it's like a jungle on both sides. I still drive. I'm blessed to be able to still drive. Cross Frederick Avenue, still on Stone Street. I can't get to my house. I'm a widow. There are trucks, cars all day long. And if a car comes from the south, you're coming in, you have to back up and let. So that needs to be taken care of real quickly, okay? Because it's not fair to me. I've been in my house over 60-some years, okay? That's not fair to me. And it's about 2 other seniors live there. And it's like a jungle. It's not, I'm a taxpayer. I own my house. It's not fair to me. I can hardly get in my driveway. I do have I can get 2 cars in my yard. So I would like for you to put that on the books. Thank you.
Thank you. Liliana Escalante. Anna Mina. D'Angela PR. Welcome. After D'Angela, we'll have Amos Watson.
Hi. Thank you. I actually wanted to start really quickly with inviting everyone in the room to take the opportunity to connect as human beings briefly for a second. The tension in this room is physically palpable, and I would love for us to just take a deep breath together for a moment. Thank you. My name is D'Angela. I have lived in Rockville. I actually live walking distance from here. I walked here from my apartment. I've lived here for 4 years, since 2020. And I moved here initially because I was accepted into a program at NIH, and I had the opportunity to work there and do research there. And since then, decided that that path is not right for me, but I do still live here, and I love living here. I am here to vocalize my support for rent stabilization and to express my disappointment in just the fact that rent stabilization was taken off of the agenda entirely. The apartment complex that I've lived in for the past 4 years, when we moved here in 2020, myself and my partner, our rent was about $2,000, and it has raised to $2,800 in 4 years, which I think is absurd, especially considering that I haven't seen any improvements in the apartment complex that I think would warrant raising my rent, gosh darn near 50% in 4 years. The property management company that owns my apartment complex, Equity Residential, they're actually based in Chicago, Illinois, which I think is kind of wild because I live here in Rockville. And the net worth of that company is $2.87 billion. And so I think it's absurd that my partner and I, who live in a 2-bedroom apartment together, he and I make just about $100,000 a year. Our incomes combined, we are struggling to continue to pay our rent. We're considering having to move somewhere else. I don't drive. We have one car between us. My partner works a government job, a good, stable government job. I work at a restaurant as a server, and we are struggling to pay our rent. I don't want to have to move. I moved here because I don't want to have to drive. I would like to not contribute to like the increases in emissions. I want to be able to walk. I want to be able to take public transit, but it's becoming impossible to do so. I want to go to grad school. I want to become a therapist. I want to help people heal. I want to go to the University of Maryland at the universities at Shady Grove. But if I have to move, I can't do that. So my options are kind of running out. And I consider myself very privileged compared to a lot of people who shared their stories today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Amos Watson.
Hello. This is amazing. I'm actually addressing these elected officials. Many of you who did earn my vote last time. I'll start. My name is Amos Watson. I'm a native of Montgomery County, Gaithersburg, actually. I had been living in the city of Rockville for 4 years. Prior to this, my wife and I lived in Frederick. A lot of people have been moving up to Frederick because it's a lot more affordable. Well, there's no jobs up there, so that's why 270 is such a mess. But so I commuted back and forth. I live to my job in Rockville. Well, now we live in Rockville. My two children are doing very, very well in the RM cluster. So we lived at the up the road at the Ivy, which is their townhouse style. Basically, one of the only places you can get if you got a family of 4 and 5. There's not really any other or too many other places around where you can rent unless it's going to be an individual house. So we found that this was actually a really good fit. So we lived there 2-year leases at a time. The previous property manager was Cove, and they offered us those 9% increase. It was not great, but doable. Well, Fairstead bought it a year now. Fairstead, they're New York. $100 million they bought it for. I guess it's a bargain compared to what they bought at the one in King Farm. But anyhow, those rent increases, though, 2-year leases, gone. The 1-year lease, we got ours. It was 17.5%. It was like, whoa! It was a lot. So I guess, and it was. I was worried. At the same time, this is a little side note. My mother died. I had been taking care of her. She was very, very sick, and she actually died. And I'm her only son. I'm doing the funeral. I'm like having to figure out all of this. Then we get the rent, and we're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So it's like lifetime stress on top of a completely unpredictable rent payment is just it's a lot. I think you can all appreciate that it really is a lot. So, well, you know what? My family, we did it. We pulled something together. We downsized. We did everything we could to move from a 3-bedroom into a 2-bedroom. We actually,
Thank you.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Oh well. All right.
Please feel free to send us an email, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Amos. Next, we have Alex Vasquez. I saw him earlier. Alex Vasquez, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I usually have a speech here, but then when I look down, I can't see you face to face, so I'm going to actually go this by the heart. So just for the record, my name is Alex Vasquez. I am the Director of Organizing for the CASA organization, and we actually have a center here in the city of Rockville that helps serve the needs of hundreds and thousands of Rockville residents. You have heard my testimony here before. You all know that our organization supports rent stabilization. Our members demand rent stabilization. But last time we were here to testify on how many folks in the city of Rockville we help. Preventing eviction, helping run rental assistance, helping people get their stuff off the curb, walking people, driving people to the shelter. It's unbelievable. We need help. We are tired. There's a lack of resources happening, not just in the city of Rockville, but across the county. Rent stabilization is going to be able to help us keep people housed, whether you want to believe it or not. These folks who are behind me, who are coming from the shelter, who are working class families, do not have the luxury of time to build more units. Yes, we do need new construction, but what are you going to say to those working families that need relief right now? And I was here when you all decided to take that discussion off the table near to midnight. That was shameful. CASA is going to continue supporting the residents of Rockville, continuing doing the work, but we are going to also organize residents to let them know that their voices need to be heard because they need your help and they need your support. The least that you can do is have a discussion. And the last thing I will say is, I want to see someone motion today to bring this discussion back. And if it fails, then you can officially see the votes of the people that chose not to do it and move forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Misha Clive, followed by Karen He.
My name is Misha Clive, and I'm a renter in Rockville. I'm addressing Mayor Ashton, Councilmember Van Grack, Councilmember Valeri, Councilmember Fulton, and Councilmember Jackson. When was the last time you struggled to pay the rent? When did you last fear that a big corporation could have power over whether or not you could afford to stay in your home? When did you last fear that you might end up without a roof over your head? I have a neighbor who fell on hard times. She lost her job. She did everything she could to try to take care of her kids. And then it got so dire that she did what Mayor Ashton has encouraged everyone to do, and she applied for emergency financial assistance. But then, due to an administrative error, she didn't get assistance, and she faced a sheriff throwing all of her stuff out of her home and faced an unstabilizing and unjust eviction. And I was there with her to support her and help alleviate some of the stress that she went through. Councilmember Shaw, who is a renter herself, who's been advocating tirelessly on the behalf of all of us renters, was also helping this resident go through this eviction, but this didn't need to happen. I don't understand how this city benefits from displacing a mother and her 2 children. Is a blip on a $3 billion developer company's balance sheet worth discarding one of our Rockville families? Now, staff has shared plans to improve REAP and increase the funding, and that's necessary, that's important, but programs like REAP are for emergency assistance, and that's for a limited group of people in a dire situation. Encouraging renters that this is our resource, it's like telling a stage 4 cancer patient to go on chemo, instead of having the preventative care to find that cancer early on before it develops and heal people and rip out the root of the problem. That's rent stabilization. That's the preventative care that we need. Basic protections to give renters the most basic of assurances that our rent will not skyrocket in our homes. For us as taxpayers in a city where half the residents are renters, we're paying corporate landlords for these evictions, and we're paying more money to these landlords while the city fails to regulate the bad actors who jack up the rent. I want my taxpayer money to support emergency assistance and rent stabilization, less reliance on emergency assistance, more preventative care. But as we know, most of this group here voted to block rent stabilization, so we're missing the opportunity to not only keep up with our partners in the region who have all passed this, but to design a rent stabilization policy that would actually make us leaders in the region for how effective it is and how exemplary it is of our values to care for our residents. When I first came before this council to testify on this issue, I thought that all of you would be for this, and I am regretting voting for the people on this council and the mayor who did not support this. I'm telling you, we need rent stabilization now.
Thank you. Welcome, Chetzy Pulser, or Sherry Pulser. Sherry? Welcome.
Good evening. This is my first time ever doing
Welcome.
this.
Welcome.
I'm a very vocal person, but never before you all, so I consider it a privilege. Imagine, if you just take a moment, close your eyes, and imagine you get a call from your adult child telling you they have pancreatic cancer. It's a parent's worst nightmare. I moved here because I wanted to support my daughter, be part of her caregiving team. And for the first 4 months, I was going back and forth between Georgia, which was hard. I'm a senior. And fortunately, after much prayer, it turned out I was able to take advantage of a severance package, which allowed me to be on payroll for almost a year. And then I went into retirement. I pay 80% of my retirement income in rent. That's too much. It's way too much. The process here, and my daughter has since passed. It's been a year. So in the midst of grieving, a parent's worst nightmare, I'm trying to stay housed. You might say, well, why don't you go back to where you moved from? It's the same thing there. My neighbors were all moving because they were getting increases of $600 to $700 a month on there. So this is a national problem. But one thing about Rockville, this is a very diverse community, one of the most diverse in the country. You all have an opportunity to be a model for the rest of the country and stabilize rents. I'm a senior, I'm 67 years old, and I have worked hard all my life only to be dealing with this now. And it is tough. It's tough every day. The system for applying for any kind of assistance to just get over a hurdle is impossible. 4 weeks ago, I went into Department of Health and Human Services. It took 4 weeks to get a call from a caseworker. 4 weeks. And then when I got that call, she really didn't get it. There was a language barrier. She was like, well, what other agencies are trying to help you? She wanted me to send her the list instead of being proactive to help me. Now, I'm giving her the list because I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And I've also applied for a case manager position with Montgomery County because I want to help people. I did mortgage lending for 30 years. I did IT networking for the rest of my time. That's what I retired from. And I took care of my clients. I don't need to have a caseworker call me and the first thing that I'm told is, oh, I have so many cases. That's not my problem. It's the caseworker's problem. It's the system. So I know my time is up, but I just want you all to think about, what if it was your child? What if you were in this situation? Just put yourself in my shoes.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
So as mentioned earlier, we have a list of folks that will continue to allow people to speak on rent stabilization and other community forum topics. It is now 7:51. We're moving to the public hearing period. We have a couple of topics related to the public hearing. We have first the public hearing to discuss the possible introduction to staff on amendments to the Lincoln Park Neighborhood Conservation District. And I want to ask Ms. Taylor Farrell, do you want to take these separately or together? Because the topics are very similar. I think we're going to have the similar one presentation, right, Jeff? Okay, thank you. We're also going to take public hearing for discussion and possible instruction to staff on zoning text amendment TXT 2024-00267 to amend the Lincoln Park Neighborhood Conservation District Overlay Zone to implement the Lincoln Park Design Guidelines. I believe there's a brief presentation. I'm going to ask Ms. Taylor Farrell if I could also have the public hearing list. Oh, we're not doing that now. All right, we'll take the presentation now. And welcome Christopher Davis.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. For the record, Christopher Davis with Community Planning and Development Services Department. As you mentioned, there are 2 public hearings scheduled related to these items. Staff does have a brief presentation that we'll run through really quickly to proceed with the public hearing. So to briefly recall, the purpose of the Conservation District Plan Amendment and Zoning Text Amendment is to revise the Conservation District initially adopted in 2007. Since that time, standards have been reviewed by staff and experienced by residents in which certain restrictions have formed to be too limiting for the improvements of single-family homes in the neighborhood. In addition to the proposed design guidelines, the plan amendment and zoning ordinance amendment proposed to implement these design guidelines. The specific contents include 10 design issues which conclusively focus on the look and feel of homes in the neighborhood. Additionally, the process will advocate for alternative compliance to allow property owners to propose alternative designs if meeting certain criteria. Should the guidelines be adopted, the new standards would help property owners build new homes and additions in the neighborhood, which are more complementary to existing buildings in the community. Furthermore, the building footprint limitations currently in the Conservation District would be amended to allow additional flexibility for residents. These new design guidelines have been indicated by residents to be supportive to allow further expansion of their properties, exclusively expansion of their homes, and use of accessory buildings. Here are the specific 10 design guidelines proposed. I'll go through them very quickly. The first one deals with the building footprint, where a maximum 1,800 square foot footprint max is proposed. This is an increase from what's currently allowed in the neighborhood. Additionally, there are building orientation requirements to ensure that the front of the homes face the street. There are also elements for parking garages and pavements to ensure that front driveways do not become the predominant element of single-family homes. The guidelines also speak to additions in the neighborhood, whether they're done on the wings or the sides of the homes, or they're vertical additions through additional stories to ensure that the new additions do not overwhelm or dominate the existing homes. The guidelines also promote simple massing and design that will result in homes that are more so indicated in the blue, and try to avoid elements like the home in the red that is more complicated in design and can be more obstructive in scale and massing. There will also be requirements for building height as well as building articulation, with the primary goal for articulation to ensure that all sides of the building have some type of architectural treatment, mainly through windows to avoid blank walls. The guidelines will also provide guidance on building materials, not necessarily prescribing specific materials, but guiding property owners on when multiple materials are used, which should be prioritized along the facades. There There will also be requirements for porches and stoops to ensure that the front entries of homes connect to the front property lines and the pedestrian scale of the neighborhood, as well as requirements on individual lots to ensure that trees are provided as new developments and improvements are made on individual properties. As a part of this process, staff has engaged in extensive outreach, including the provision of two walking tours, the most recent which was done in October of 2024. The mayor and council, along with public officials and residents, were able to tour the community and discuss specific design issues and possible solutions through the design guidelines. Additionally, there have been public meetings, surveys, and regular updates to the Lincoln Park Civic Association, as well as our advisory committee. Postcard mailings have gone out for the public meetings, including tonight's public hearing. The Planning Commission has also reviewed the project, including a briefing and their own public hearing. At their October meeting, the Planning Commission provided its recommendation and unanimously recommended approval of the design guidelines and the adoption of the Conservation District Plan. In its review, the Planning Commission also considered the inquiries from the mayor and council, including these 4 specific items shown on the screen. The commission did not have any additional concerns and furthermore concurred with the staff's responses as included in the staff report tonight. So with that, staff recommends that the mayor and council hold the public hearings to consider feedback on the proposed plan amendments and design guidelines. And furthermore, a work session has been scheduled for your January 6th meeting to further consider this item for further action and feedback to staff. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Can you please clarify when the public comments will be accepted until?
I believe we can leave that up to your discretion, whether if you want to continue post tonight's hearing.
So we have a work session scheduled for January 6th. Do you want to do a week? Well, that's the holidays, but just a week or so before that?
That's
December
acceptable. That's acceptable, staff.
All right. If you could, I'm going to open up the floor for folks who have testified. I just want to make sure we have a clear date. If you could just take a look at when you'd like, given what you need to do to prepare any comments for us, when you'd like that towards the end of December.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this now section is focused on the public hearing for the 2 items I just mentioned. We will go back to community public forum to allow people to speak. So I will take those now who are here for public hearing. Anita Neal Powell, welcome.
Madam Mayor, I need to ask when the record
sure.
was-
Has this been properly advertised?
Yes, the record has been properly advertised in the
Okay.
Washington Post on October the 31st, November the 7th, and on the city's website.
Thank you. And just to note, each individual will be allowed 3 minutes to speak and organizations 5. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Anita Neal Powell, and tonight I'm speaking as a long-time resident who grew up in Lincoln Park, president of the Lincoln Park Historical Foundation, and as a former candidate for Rockville City Council. I have attended and participated in almost all the meetings regarding the Lincoln Park community and as one of the communities in the city of Rockville. I know the future of the community is being discussed and presented to you tonight through the Lincoln Park Design Guidelines and with language to amend the adopted 2007 Lincoln Park Neighborhood Conservation District Plan. Changes are already underway. This historic community dates to the 19th century. I understand change. However, we cannot assume that one footprint in the city represents the footprints of all the communities because it does not. As I look around the city and its communities, such as West End, Twinbrook, and others, our communities are different. Where I see a lot of open spaces in some parts of the city, West End, for example, I see little space left in other parts of the city, such as Lincoln Park. I am hopeful that as you will determine the future, identify or propose changes in the Lincoln Park Community Guidelines, it will take in all communities in the city. Even though tonight we are only speaking about Lincoln Park and how we fit in with the small amount of space that we have in the community. In September, for those of you who participated in the walking tour of Lincoln Park provided by staff, you can see through your lens what I'm speaking about. As you walk through the community, what did you see or think about as you were led through the community and how it may look like in the future? Lincoln Park legacy and its attached garages, tall houses overbearing the smaller homes, streets that are narrow, beautiful trees is one of the things that was highlighted in the conservation plan, unique architectural designs of some of the older homes, etc. This I bring to your attention as you decide on what is next for Lincoln Park. We are a community of 12 streets fully packed with new development, redevelopment, new design with existing structure. For example, in 1960, that is when the change started. Very few houses in Lincoln Park have front garages attached to their homes. Garages, if any, are in the back of the houses. The legacy is unique and different in its own way. They are pretty much intact and will not change. Why? Because there is no space for new houses in that development. However, on the other hand, or the other 11 streets, there is room or not for change. Will a change take place based on your decision? It probably will. I must admit that there have been many improvements in the community with the Lincoln Park Community Center, bus shelter, new sidewalks in some parts of the community. So thank you for what you are doing and bringing change to the community. I also ask that you take your vote into consideration, and that all communities in the city are the same, but unique in their own character. Again, footprints in the city should match the complexion and character of each community, not just the city. Today, Lincoln Park is a walkable and pedestrian-friendly community, which makes us unique and different. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. Just a reminder for folks, please state whether you live in the city of Rockville. Ms. Anita Summerhour.
My name is Anita Summerhour, and I live at 715 Douglas Avenue. I am in favor of amending the Lincoln Park Conservation District overlay zone with the adoption of a zoning text amendment that creates a process to amend the Lincoln Park Neighborhood Conservation District, eliminating the current residential standards in the Lincoln Park Conservation District Plan and replacing them with the new standards found in the proposed residential design guidelines will eliminate standards that were well-intentioned standards that we thought would preserve the character of Lincoln Park, but have resulted in restrictions that prohibited adding additions to existing structures and made it necessary for residents to have to go to the Board of Appeals to build a small storage shed. Chris Davis has provided many opportunities since 2021 for residents to review, comment on, and make suggestions on the proposed design guidelines. We need to go forward. Thanks for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Daria Tassima, is that for Lincoln Park Designers? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for sending us the flyer about this hearing. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before the council and the mayor. My name is Daria Tassima, and I've been a resident for Lincoln Park for the past 15 years. My family and I have been proud member of this historic community, actively participating in matters that concern the city and the council. I'm here today with our four of my neighbors who are sitting on the back, and together we have lived and raised the children. We own property and house, and contribute to preserving this unique character of the historic neighborhood. However, over the past decades, we have observed that neighboring communities have benefited from significant upgrades in infrastructure and living facilities. Despite owning sizable properties and paying tax comparable to other parts of the city, we are restricted from making necessary improvements to our homes. For example, the 1,500 square foot usable space restriction severely limits the ability to expand homes to meet the need of the growing families. Accessory structures such as sheds and porches are counted against these limits, further reducing flexibility and functionality. This restriction hinder our ability to enhance our quality of life while maintaining our commitment to preserve the historic integrity of the area. We reviewed the fourth draft published, and the city is on the right direction to accommodate our asks. Madam Mayor, during your October visit to our neighborhoods, we raised the concern, and then we were advised to present them in the council ahead of the December votes on the code improvement opportunities. We hope the council will make the decision that carefully balance the preservation of our historic community with the legitimate needs for its residents. I just added this because I was listening to the lady who was complaining about that. So by the way, regarding the lady who raised her concern about the traffic on the Stone Street, she's absolutely right. At 86 old, she struggled with her issues. So we do, along with our children. The traffic situation is unbearable. People park in our neighborhood on Street, and Stone Street, Spring Avenue, and Frederick, and commute to Washington, D.C., treating our street as a free parking. Adding this, people repair cars right on the street, and trucks, landscape vehicles, and others are staying the whole time there.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony. Welcome, Seble Mangesha. Okay, thank you. All right. Beza, same. Okay, thank you. Theodore Abera.
Good evening. My name is Theodore Sabara. I live with my sister on 219 Frederick Avenue. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and council members for giving me this opportunity to speak before you today. I have lived here in Rockville since I moved to US in 2014 with my sister, as I said. I truly love the city of Rockville, and many of my family members, relatives, friends live nearby. Over time, I got married and now have 2 children of my own, along with the stepdaughter, whom going to high school, as you can see here in Richard Montgomery High School. I moved out of my sister's home recently, began looking to buy or build a house of my own to stay close to my family, friends. However, the restriction in place for the Lincoln Park neighborhood have made this challenging. I have seen many lots and houses come on the market that I would like to invest and develop into the house. But the current housing restriction limits to the options available to residents based on the family size of my own. Not necessarily based on the family size of my own, but the restrictions makes it so much difficult to accommodate the size of the house I was looking for, my family size. That is why I'm here today to voice my support for the proposed changes scheduled for the vote this December. I believe easing or lifting these restrictions will make it easier for families like mine to find or build homes that suits their needs, strengthening our communities in process. Thank you.
Thank you. Hailey Yesham? You're good? Okay. All right, thank you. Gail Koenig? Welcome.
Thanks for this, by the way. Just 2 quick comments. One, the parking thing you're talking about, they're absolutely correct. My street gets, I'm on Ashley Avenue in Lincoln Park. My street gets parked solid. I mean, if I didn't have a driveway, I would have no place to park in my own home. The other thing that I'd like to bring up is some of the houses that are now going up are just squeaking that 30-foot limit. And there's one house around the corner on Elizabeth it's already up and occupied, but they wanted a taller home, so they built the house as tall as they wanted and then built the dirt in the yard up so that they hit that 30 feet, but their yard is 10 feet above the sidewalk. And I'm seeing that kind of a little bit followed through in a couple of other places where there's some new construction going on. And it's very concerning because that house, I mean, it's a perfectly nice house, but it just overwhelms the two single-story houses that are next door to us that are part of the community. I've been in my home there for coming up on 40 years. And the changes that I'm seeing recently, I'm not happy with, quite frankly. I don't mind houses being a little bit bigger and allowing this. The things that you're proposing are fine, but you need to think about some of the sneaky ways people get around some of the rules, and see if you can't, damp that down just a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Justin Martin. Okay. You want to speak? Okay, all right. That exhausts the list of those who've signed up in advance. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic related to Lincoln Park? Can you please come to the mic and state your name and whether you live in the city of Rockville?
I'm Houston Hancock. I grew up in Rockville. I graduated from Richard Montgomery, presenting my African-American Spanish children from the Butch Israels to the summer hours. Great athletes, Mad Dog Curtis. The whole lot of them are not going to provide what will probably happen to Dallas tonight. I'm sorry. Anyway, I have the perfect segue. Coakley Williams builds beautiful parking garages by metros. Back in the time period of when the Jim Davis gas station car businesses were built, when the metro came through, Lincoln Park was totally cut off from civilization with maybe the high stepping up to the 7-Eleven to get junk food. Okay? Now what they need is...
Can you please come to the mic, or either hold the mic or come to the mic? Yes, please. And please state your name.
Houston Hancock, I'm a friend of Roy Coakley. The Coakley family has built parking garages and solved all the parking garage problems for the most part. So what about Lincoln Park? Why not have a double runway, come over the highway and easily come down over the metro and gradually into the old business district and the residential district? Only people driving through there are the local residents, and the rest park in these parking garages. What do you think? What do you think? How expensive would that be? And why Jim Davis and Barge Davis, who were good friends of mine, restored cars, had good working businesses in there? We fell in love with Brown versus Board of Education because I got to meet guys like Butch Israel, one of the best athletes I ever saw, better than Mike Curtis. Couldn't hit as hard. Didn't go after that fan. Anyway, that's an idea I have. I could work with Rory Coakley, and I was paid several years ago to redesign Stone Street. I got paid $1,000. I don't see any improvement, but you can build these parking garages over existing businesses and have a dual entrance to bring commerce back into the little section and peace and harmony with commercial and regular vehicles, and stickers for sure. Give them tickets. Give them Bethesda price tickets if they come in there and block. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Reverend Moultrie, did you want to speak?
Good evening. I'm Reverend Moultrie, Mount Calvary Baptist Church in the Lincoln Park area. I actually agree with everything that we've heard from the residents of Lincoln Park. I just have a couple of questions, things that I want to make sure we're considering. Here in recent years, there's a lot of investors buying properties in Lincoln Park and renting them out. And we need to ensure that the residents of Lincoln Park, their voices are being heard as to what's needed in that neighborhood, not investors. It's important that we make that distinction. I believe that most of what I've read, I attended several of the meetings, most of what I've read in the draft came from residents, but I'm not certain. So I'd like to ask Chris, is there anything in that document that came from owners that are not residents of the Lincoln Park community? And if so, can we find out what those things are so that we know how they benefit the residents of Lincoln Park? And Lastly, I'll just address the issue with Stone Street and Ashley, actually with a lot of streets in Lincoln Park. Parking is such a tremendous, tremendous problem. And we have to find a way to deal with this. This is a family-friendly neighborhood. It has been for years. And a lot of the people that have businesses on the street repairing cars and people that, some of these houses where they have 6 and 7 people living in a house that should be a single family home, they're taking up valuable parking spaces and people are not able to park in front of their own homes sometimes. And only one lane of traffic to get through in either direction. These things need to be addressed, but I do applaud the work of the design committee and putting good standards in place for Lincoln Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Prather.
Hi, my name is Robin Pracer, and I live in Lincoln Park. I guess I'm all for the designs, but recently I'm more concerned that these designs won't apply to these new zones that you all are trying to put on Stone Street. So how are we going to bridge this gap between these proposed zones that allow quadplexes, sixplex units on a road that already, as they said before, has one lane to get back and forth through with just the single family units. And this only dictates how you build a single family, not a quad, not a duplex, not any of that. So I was trying to figure out, is there a plan to bridge these two together? That's my question to you all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak about the Lincoln Park design guidelines? All right. I knew it. Welcome.
Thank you. Justin Martin. I'm a resident of Lincoln Park as well. I just wanted to echo the fact that I agree with all of the things that are on the design committee as well. My main concern is that we could keep pace with the neighborhoods directly across from us, like the Maryville and the Berry, I think it's Berry Hills or something like that is right next door to us. They are building quite sizable homes that are more, as far as the comps are concerned, bring up the value of the property in the neighborhood. So that's my issue with my favor with the design committee stuff, is that we seem to be able to keep pace with everyone else that's building homes around us. So that was my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak about the design guidelines? Right. All right. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Sergio Diaz. I hear a lot of different stories here, but I got the best one for you. I moved from Montgomery Village in 2016. I bring 2 kids to Lincoln Park. Now I got 3. I believe if we can go forward with the guideline, my 17-year-old boy will stay with me for a little while. The other way, maybe he need to move because I don't have a room. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, I think that concludes those who wanted to speak today, unless I'm seeing anyone else. Okay. All right. So can you tell us the date that the public comments will be taking until?
Yes, ma'am. We have Friday, December 20th.
Okay. The record will be open until Friday, December 20th. Thank you. And Mayor and Council will have that session. Repeat the date for everyone.
That is Monday, January 6th.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. That concludes this section of the public hearing. We'll be taking a 5-minute break, and then we'll reconvene with community forum to listen to more voices. Good evening, Rockville. Today is still November 18, 2024. We are reconvening meeting number 27-24. We have extended community forum to allow additional voices and people time to share their stories. We are going to ask folks again to please address the mayor and council. Please do so in a civil and courteous manner. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes, and we ask that you stick to that time allowed. There will be a time clock in front of you, and you'll hear an audible beep at the end of your 3 minutes. Please state your name and whether you live in the city of Rockville for the record. Okay, so we had the next person on our list as Karen He.
Dear honored Mayor Ashton and the council members, this is the first time I come here. And I come here for a different reason because I missed my schedule for a drop-in meeting at 5:45. I thought it's 6:45, so I'm very lucky to get the opportunity to come to this room and to get my voice heard. So I am Karen He. I am from We Start Corporation. We Start Corporation is located in downtown Rockville. We are in the 20 courthouse, 22 miles away from here. So we are a nonprofit organization focusing on promoting the STEM education. So we are the biggest robotics club in the Maryland. And let me just talk about some achievements that we have achieved from the last competition season. So we have brought international recognition at the World Championship. 5 teams advanced to World Championship for the VEX robotics. And one team, the skill challenge record is the highest in the Maryland state, and it's ranked 26 in the world. And another team is ranked number 40 in the whole entire world. And the second one, and we are the scorekeeper for the state of Maryland. And we have over 100 students, but we have very limited space. And you can see in the 20 courthouse is about like 1,400 square footage. So we did not get any other fundings from outside our club. So I am woman minority working in the STEM world. I work tirelessly. I work for day and nights and the weekends after school time. And I work with a group of dedicated parents to help promote the STEM education. And this STEM education actually is to satisfy the need of the students that do not have the opportunity to have those robotics program, computer programming classes in the county public schools. So we have attracted students from outside Montgomery County as well. Some are coming from the Virginia, some are coming from Howard County. So we are really bring the recognition of the STEM education in this community. And our students during the summertime, they have offered a lot of free classes in the city of Rockville. We really bring the awareness of STEM education in this community. We have, benefit a lot of students from our program, but we would like to have some, attention from the city of Rockville to recognize our program and give us some support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Next, welcome Ezra Pine, followed by Nikave Z. That one's off. Not yet. Welcome.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Ashton and council members. My name is Ezra Pine. I am a young professional who lives and works in Rockville. I currently rent at an apartment in Twinbrook. As I was saying, I currently rent at an apartment in Twinbrook, and I am here on behalf of a large group of residents, many of whom are standing here behind me, many of whom are out here in the hallway, and many of whom who could not be here tonight, to request that you listen to your constituents and pass a rent stabilization law immediately. I would like to particularly call out Councilmember Larry. As someone who is a proud Twinbrook resident, I am disappointed in your decision to vote against Twinbrook tenants on July 8th. During the past few months, a united and diverse coalition of renters and supported by organizations tirelessly canvassed our neighborhoods, knocking on nearly 2,000 doors to share their stories. To share their stories and seek your support. We have listened to our neighbors' fears and hopes, hearing the cries for help from seniors on fixed incomes, young families trying to make ends meet, and essential workers who are the backbone of our community. The message is clear and urgent. The current state of unregulated rent increases is unsustainable and is driving many of us to the brink of displacement. We are proud to live in Rockville. We contribute to its vibrancy and growth every day. Our children attend its schools, we shop in its stores, and we work in its businesses. We are the seniors who have spent decades nurturing this community, the young adults striving to build a future here, and the essential workers who keep this city running smoothly. Yet, despite our contributions, we are being priced out of our homes by skyrocketing rent increases that show no sign of abating. Imagine the heartbreak of a senior citizen who, after years of loyalty to their community, faces the impossible choice between paying rent, between paying for their medication or paying for their rent. Picture the anxiety of a young family whose dreams of stability are shattered by an unexpected rent hike. Envision the stress of an essential worker who, despite working tirelessly, cannot afford a secure place to live in the city they serve. Our coalition of renters has worked diligently to bring these stories to light. We have met with neighbors, held community meetings, and shared our experiences with one another. The consensus is overwhelming. We need a permanent rent stabilization policy to protect the very fabric of our community. This policy is not just about controlling costs, it is about preserving the diversity and vitality that makes Rockville unique. We urge you to listen to the voices of those directly affected and please pass a rent stabilization policy.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Welcome, Rashida Lee. Rashida Lee, are you here? Rashida? Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to speak. And well, my story is a little different. I raised up 2 children in this community, 2 successful children by the grace of God in this community, and they went on to, by the education they received in Montgomery County, they were able to both go into 4-year colleges and graduate. I'm very proud of that. But as of late, things have been very rough, very tough, trying to keep housing in a community that I've been in over 20 years. It seems like I'm being pushed out of this community to go somewhere else because of the rising cost. I can't afford it. And I've worked tirelessly over the years in this community solely, and I'm trying to stay here. This is my home. This is where I raise my children. This is where I am loved. I feel my community here. I feel my community on my side here. But I'm just asking that you will allow for rent stabilization so that people from this community can continue to stay in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a Nicole? Welcome.
Hi, I'm Nicole Zimmerman, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Montgomery County branch of Metro DC Democratic Socialists of America. We have around 400 dues-paying members in Montgomery County, about 70 of those in Rockville. We engage in a multi-pronged strategy to build working-class organizations to counter the power of corporations and the wealthy. This includes things like supporting unions, mutual aid programs, electing candidates and passing ballot initiatives, and engaging working people in legislative issues like this, rent stabilization. DSA believes that housing is human right and that the for-profit housing system has failed to provide safe, affordable, high-quality housing for all. And this is not just like something that we got from reading a book. This is something our own members have been pushed out of Montgomery County, pushed out of Rockville by raising rents. For that reason, DSA was a lead coalition partner in the fight to win rent stabilization in Montgomery County. And here we are doing it again in Rockville because unfortunately that law exempted Rockville and Gaithersburg. Since last spring, as you just heard from Ezra, DSA has knocked on around 2,000 doors to talk to tenants about rent stabilization. Almost universally, folks are in support of rent stabilization. And they're often disappointed to learn that, first of all, it doesn't apply to Rockville and that their own council has failed them to pass rent stabilization and protect them. The majority of the Rockville City Council is failing these residents. It doesn't feel like a coincidence that Mayor Monique Ashton, council members Adam Van Grack, Kate Bolton, and Marissa Van Glury were all endorsed by the Developer Founder Affordable Maryland Pact. We also did work in the 2022 elections in the county. We had the exact same dynamic where Progressives for Progress tried to buy the Montgomery County elections. And by the way, I know what an independent expenditure is. We do electoral work. So I understand when you say you didn't get money from them, I understand how an independent expenditure works. But I will say, back in the 2022 election, the people who were endorsed by Progressive Progress, they denounced those contributions. I haven't seen that same dynamic in Rockville. Sorry if I missed it. Both locally and nationally, DSA is getting a huge influx of people interested in taking on corporate power and keeping their communities affordable and keeping prices down. So I invite you to get with us or get out of the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Michelle Shen. Michelle Shen. Last call from, okay, welcome, Michelle.
Hello, my name is Michelle. I'm a resident of Rockville, and I also support rent stabilization. So thank you to the mayor and members of the council for allowing me to testify. I disagree with the mayor's and council members' decision to vote against rent stabilization on July 8th. I support rent stabilization because I believe housing should be a human right. I grew up in Montgomery County, and I currently live in the King Far neighborhood with my partner and my mother. I understand that I'm really fortunate that I have family that can support me, but I would like to move to a home of my own and be able to raise a family, but the cost of housing in this area makes that really difficult. It makes it a dream rather than a reality. And as a member of this community, I'd like to see the mayor and the city council prioritize housing for families and not housing for profit. Rent stabilization will give people like me the peace of mind that the end of my lease will not force me out of the community that I grew up in. And as somebody who cares for the people in my community, I don't want to see my neighbors become homeless because of a mayor and city council in the pocket of the Affordable Maryland PAC that would rather protect investments over families. So thank you for your time, and I urge you to reconsider your July decision on rent stabilization. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Brad? Is there a Brad? Okay. After Brad, Justin Lee.
Go Brad. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I have simply one thing to say, which is for those who supported rent stabilization, thank you. For the rest of us who are up here trying to persuade the rest of you who didn't, we are drowning, and without your help, we will die in the streets, and we will haunt you until you are no longer in positions of power. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin, please refrain from threats, but I just wanted to note, thank you. Please also state whether you're in the city of Rockville.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Justin, and I am a renter in Rockville. I want to thank you for the opportunity for me to speak to you all tonight, but I strongly protest your refusal to consider rent stabilization. I'm a recent college graduate who moved to Rockville this year as a software developer, but I see my interest and the lifelong residents here as one and the same. The luxury apartments here aren't built for them. They aren't built for me. They aren't built for people to live in. They're built for speculation value. We don't have time for these profit-driven developers to keep rent down for us. People are getting price gouged right now. For young people like myself to lay roots and contribute new energy to Rockville, we need to be able to plan for the future. We need to be able to predict living costs, and we can't do that if rent can skyrocket any month. So I want you to listen to renters when they say their kids can grow up in a stable environment, or when young adults can't afford to live here and they have to leave the city, or how people of color are forced to be displaced from, say, they're lived in for generations. Simply put, rent stabilization is a foundational step towards housing security, and stability for renters means stability for our entire community. And of course, I'm not saying rent stabilization is going to single-handedly solve the housing crisis. I want more affordable housing being built as well, right? I want more community-controlled housing initiatives. But rent stabilization is a tangible and crucial starting point to protecting our 30,000 tenants in the city. And it should be understood as part of a broader struggle against the financialization of housing, where homes in Rockville are reduced to revenue-generating assets for large corporations. The fight for rent stabilization has proven to be a foundation to tenant-led movements and genuine democracy here in Rockville. As you can see, the momentum from everyone who showed up here today. So as we continue to organize and grow, renters and other residents will remember every time that you, members of the council and mayor, have ignored the pleas of your constituencies for rent stabilization. And we will remember which of you stood with mega corporations against renters and workers. So please, I ask you again to please support rent stabilization now. Thank you.
Jean Kay? No? Okay. Joel Mercado?
Hello, my name is Joel Mercado. I am a resident of Rockville, and I support rent stabilization. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I want to voice my disagreement with the mayor and the council members who voted against rent stabilization. I believe rent stabilization will support a diverse population of different income levels in Rockville, giving them more reliability to plan their futures, foster stronger social and economic ties to their communities, and mitigate the risk of homelessness and housing insecurity. I've had the joy of living in Rockville for nearly 4 years. I've seen some of the positive changes, including the bus and metro station being improved. And I've had the pleasures of getting to know my neighbors. One of my neighbors is actually nice enough to host a fire on the weekends, and I've gotten to know the majority of those on my street. My partner and I would also love to start a family, but that is hindered by the rising cost of living. As the child of asylum seekers from Nicaragua, I understand the struggles of people looking for a new community. To not provide everyday people with the assurance of their homes, we create splinters in the community through that uncertainty. It creates an air of individualism, which I believe helps no one. My partner and I, as mentioned, would love to start a family. To those who voted against it, I urge you to think about why you chose to join the government. Be mindful of the most vulnerable. I urge Mayor and the council to reconsider their July 8th decision on rent stabilization. We are human beings who will suffer any consequences of what will actually happen. As you've seen, people of all arrays of life will be affected. I ask you to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. It's Jebson Homau. Welcome.
Madam Mayor, thank you so much for having us here tonight. And I want to thank the councillors for being here tonight. I want to present myself to you as an individual who found himself in a very homeless situation. And I was privileged, after much of a struggle, to be placed on a particular shelter off Shady Grove Road, which happens to be in this particular neighborhood. The task before me was very simple. I'm a father of a vulnerable adult, and I need to find accommodation. My life circumstances switched overnight. I went through a horrible divorce. I laughed about it because I knew there's better waiting for me. In Montgomery County, I was told that Rockville is the best place to be able to find security because there's an economy that is thriving here. And as we come to you today, I want to say the following. It is important to preserve the resources that you have. That is correct. But the most valuable resource you have is not money, it's your people. Because your people generate the money that is necessary for each and every one of us to be here. Without finances, or finances without people, you have a gap. Now, unless somebody is planning on turning this place into some kind of a utopia for just the wealthy, and you're going to clean your own streets, run your own supermarkets, then go ahead with the way you're going. But I want to say this. The tenants and the residents of Rockville are a unique group of people. They've worked with you through COVID. They've allowed you to be where you are today. They've allowed you to stay in office. I want to move on to something else just very quickly. Trying to find accommodation from a shelter in Rockville is almost impossible because they make the entry level almost impossible. Now, my question is, I don't know if any of you have ever visited or tried to stay in a shelter. Stay, don't visit. Live among them. Feel the pain, and then come back and make your decisions. So my point is very simple. Rent stabilization is a necessary tool, both for the landlord and both for the tenant. It protects the interests of the asset that you are basically keeping on your soil. Another thing is, I cannot understand why it is when properties have been sold, they've been sold out of state to landlords who have no interest in what's going on here. We need to change that. Some of the direction that you get from rent stabilization will keep our money within our community, grow our community, rather than send it out. So I'm saying going forward, we have a very necessary need. And I thank you for listening to us today. Those of you who did not vote, please reconsider.
Thank you.
Your community loves you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, Matt Losak. Matt? Yes. After Matt will be Daniel Dunleavy.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Ashton and the council for hearing our testimony this evening. My name is Matt Losak. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. We were established in 2010 as the first and only regional nonprofit dedicated exclusively to renter outreach, education, organizing, and advocacy. We're also the leading co-founders of Renters United Maryland, and we represent hundreds of thousands of renters throughout Montgomery County. We come before you this evening to again voice our support for common sense rent stabilization legislation to be considered and passed in Rockville. It simply makes no sense to have a work session on housing stability while disallowing any discussion of even modest rent stabilization proposals, the absence of which is a tragic omission for Rockville renters. It is an affront to the scores of renters who have been packing City Hall and pleading for rent stabilization, and to the public at large who support basic efforts to confront rent gouging and who care about stemming the forced migration of low-income and working-class families and an increasing number of seniors on fixed incomes. These residents are not fooled by attempts by this body to deflect the policy discussion with misleading claims that we can build our way out of rent gouging and poor housing conditions while your renter community, many of whom represent your most vulnerable, continue to face losing their homes with nowhere to go. The representation by the council of a focus on poor conditions is a false choice where conditions must somehow come before or in lieu of rent stabilization. We again urge this council to disenthrall itself from the anguished pleas of the landlord-developer community and their allies that policies that balance their reasonable expectation to maintain a profit margin and keep up with legitimate overhead expenses be balanced with Rockville's residents' right to stable, quality homes. It's time to include a reasonable rent stabilization program as part of Rockville's housing program. Your public is listening. We hope you are too. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Daniel Dunleavy.
Hi, my name is Daniel Dunleavy. I'm a resident of Rockville, and I support rent stabilization and government building of housing. I thank you for the opportunity to testify. I support rent stabilization on the basis it is a necessary Band-Aid to a housing crisis that requires further action to stop the bleeding as well as heal the wound. The position of opposing rent stabilization relies on falsely associating it as the cause of a future lack of supply. And that's sort of driving this like hard-nosed perception of data that allows us to maybe ignore any development of sympathies we have for people's plight as presented here. Rent stabilization doesn't cause housing shortages as though some direct cause and effect. What causes housing shortages is restrictive zoning and the profit incentives of landlords and private developers. Whether you help renters or not today will not make a difference in the long-term calculations of wishfully manipulating the greed of private interests. They're not interested in building affordable housing either way, but they are interested in scapegoating renters for a problem they and government inaction are causing. Letting landlords raise rents 20% year over year won't result in affordable housing 20 years later. The only thing that will lead to affordable housing is government action, not deferring to the whims of the market. High housing costs are not caused by the Band-Aid, they're caused by the gaping wound the Band-Aid is barely covering. The wound is caused by the market, by the greed and indifference of the market. A housing crisis is a failure of the market and requires government intervention. Had the market been a rational system, had it been a rational way to model our society, it would have solved this problem already, would have produced this crisis in the first place. Yet the logic of denying rent stabilization defers to the sort of wisdom of the market. Rent stabilization doesn't prevent government from solving the underlying issue. It has just been used as a scapegoat for the historic failures of hands-off neoliberal policy. The United States housing market is a landlord's laissez-faire utopia, yet, surprise, surprise, it has not resulted in islands of new housing supply, as I read at Montgomery Perspective. Studies on rent stabilization forecast consequences of a system that has already failed anyone not already rich. It is not renters evicted from their homes who are threatening instability through some short-sighted, childish demand for justice. You threaten instability by not solving this crisis and instead tailoring the local economy for landlord and developer profits. I implore the Council to rise to the moment when neoliberal policymaking and deference to the market has been shown to have failed the working class, led to mass income and wealth inequality, led to a housing crisis, a climate crisis, democratic instability, and in the election of Trump, a rejection of the status quo by voters who have felt abandoned and instead been told, yes, you're hurting now, but actually we're thinking long term. Just be patient. Whether you mean to or not, that is a lie. Pass rent stabilization and build social housing.
Thank you. Welcome, Natasha James. Natasha James, welcome.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Natasha James. I lived in Rockville, Maryland my entire life. I have a child. I'm pregnant now, and I've been married for 15 years. I've been in a domestic violence situation. I've been displaced. I'm moving around shelter to shelter, and then so it makes me more vulnerable. And I'm for rent stabilization. And thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. That exhausts the list of those who have signed up in advance. We are pleased to have extended community forum. Is there anyone else who has not signed up who would like to speak? Welcome, Mr. Russo.
Good evening. My name is Vincent Russo. I am a homeowner in Rockville, and I very much believe housing attainment and affordability is a top issue in our community and indeed throughout the country. I very much want my children to be able to afford to live here. As a nation, we have grossly underinvested in housing construction for many years, and this has often been hindered by local zoning policies that restrict the creation of housing. The cumulative effect of all of this is a very real housing crisis that we are in today. I encourage this body to consider policies that will create the conditions to expand the housing stock in Rockville, especially multifamily dwellings. This should include things like zoning reform, streamlining the development process, and embracing new housing models. We must work also with our partners to add housing density around our transit stations. Rockville will not be able to solve this problem for the region or the country, but we can certainly do our part and be a model for other communities. This council was absolutely right to take rent stabilization regimes off the table. This was such an important signal to send that Rockville and Gaithersburg as well are both taking their housing generation crisis very, very seriously, and that both communities will not discourage new projects or reinvestment in legacy complexes. No rent control regimes invariably lead to perverse outcomes and distortions that were unintended when they were implemented, especially in supply-constrained environments like we have here in Rockville. To the extent there is a market failure that needs to be addressed, it's to remove blockades to housing construction. We are indeed seeing media reports, and we've heard some in testimony here about, in other forums, about renters actually offering more to pay more than the property owners are asking. Renters bidding up rent is a sign that too few units are available, not that property companies are gouging customers. In fact, they are underpricing relative to what the market will apparently bear. Rockville and other governments should move swiftly to add supply. We've seen in other cities like Minneapolis that markets respond very quickly to appropriate policy changes. Shelter costs in Minneapolis have risen much less than national averages after the city made several pro-housing policy changes. I support your decision to steer clear of rental price control regime and urge you to consider more attainable policy reforms to address the housing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all who have testified. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. Thank you. We will close. Oh, is this? Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name and whether you live in the city of Rockville.
Hi there, my name's Joseph. I'm actually a Tacoma Park renter, and I want to give 2 points. One is an anecdotal experience as a beneficiary of rent stabilization policies that they have there, and one is to sort of expand on the counterpoint, to expand on some of that gentleman's testimony in terms of how we can expand housing supply with rent stabilization. So I have a month-to-month rental. I've had multiple jobs transitions, a month-to-month lease, and that stabilization has been crucial for me to be able to stay where I am, to feel settled, and to continue applying for other jobs and find those jobs. If I did not have that stability, if it was something I had to think and worry about, it would have directly impeded my own financial stability. So that's my anecdotal experience. I'm a beneficiary of rent stabilization policies in Tacoma Park, and I think that should be here. In terms of restricted housing supply and rent stabilization, you've heard a lot in jurisdictions, rent stabilization leads to a decrease in new construction of housing. That is more a result of county and state historic inaction on pro-development on policies that would increase the housing supply. That is changing. We have the MOVE Act in the pipeline, and that is going to convert at the county level, and that is going to convert a lot of vacant office spaces into housing. We have housing policies to allow duplexes, multiplexes that are in the pipeline if they're passed. And so if you're worried about restricting housing supply, you need to get in support of those proposals because those are the solutions to the issues we face. I have spoken with a lot of renters. I have not seen many who are eager to pay more than what they currently can. So I don't think that's a widespread phenomenon you need to concern yourselves with too much. But yes, thank you. please, please, please change your minds. These are the people who typically can't come out. They typically don't deliver testimony, but they're here tonight. Please deliver for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who has testified. We appreciate all of your stories and your courage in telling us what you've experienced. We will have a housing work session later this evening. Prior to that, we do have a consent agenda item to address. So agenda 9A, B, C, D, and E. Ratify and approve the city manager's early execution of a grant agreement with the Maryland Energy Administration for FY24 Smart Energy Communities Clean Energy for Local Governments Grant for lighting improvements at Thomas Farm Community Center, as well as a Maryland Smart Energy Communities Clean Energy for Local Governments Grant for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. That's B. C, authorization for the city manager to amend an existing stormwater management easement associated with King Buick. C. Next is D, authorization for the city manager to release and extinguish an existing stormwater management easement on Lot 24, Block A, The Pike. And lastly, E, approval of minutes. Colleagues, how would you like to take this? Do anyone have, you have any questions? You need to pull any. Okay, do we have a motion to approve all? Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve consent agenda items 9A, 9B, 9C, 9D, and 9E.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilman Valeri. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Thank you. Okay, it is approved. Now we're moving on to our work session. Housing Strategies Work Session on Stability. Welcome Jane Lyons-Rader and Ryan Trout. And I know that Mr. Mihalik is going to have an opening statement. Thank you.
Mary Ashton, thank you very much. We're excited to have the work session tonight. This is the third work session. This one's going to be focused in on stability. So just to give you a quick outline, and again, this is our typical work session format. We'll provide an introduction to the item. We will ask for some very specific feedback from the City Council this evening. We'll show you those questions in just a second. Provide some background. Jane's going to get into some detail on some housing stability strategies, which we're very pleased to present to you. We'll outline the next steps, and then again, we'll go back to the requested feedback that we're asking from the council tonight. And before that, we're happy to entertain any questions. So again, housing is one of the three focus areas for the Mayor and Council in June. As you guys remember, there was a high-level briefing on the housing crisis and policy landscape. Today's work session is really the third, again, work session that we're talking about. Back in September, we focused in on supply. October, we talked about subsidy. And November, we talked about stability. The work sessions are really provide you all with an opportunity to direct staff in a very broad way of things that you hear tonight that you like, and things that you may not like, and to say, hey, bring some of these things back as an ordinance program or a budget amendment, and we'll move forward from there. Again, as people mentioned tonight, and as you all know, a briefing on rent stabilization, really focusing on hard caps, was held back in July. The discussion tonight, again, let me stress tonight, is really talk about other methods to provide stability in the city of Rockville. Next slide. So the questions that we're looking for tonight, again, to think about this as we're doing the presentation, do you agree that staff should focus on the strategies identified in this work session? Are there any other stability strategies that staff should explore? And then we really want you to dig into what we should do with Chapter 18, rental facilities and landlord-tenant relations, the rewrite. Again, not very specific in terms of change this code, just change this code, but what are some opportunities there to make some modifications? And again, we'll bring that back later on if it's something that you want to pursue. So that's really it, and I'll turn it over to Jane, who will kind of get you up to speed on stability strategies. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. My name is Jane Lyons-Rader. I'm the Housing Programs Manager. And here to kick us off, there is a slide that you have seen now many times. This will probably be the last time that you see it. But we're here tonight because the status quo as it relates to housing affordability and stability is broken. And we have Policy interventions, those are the tools that we have in our toolbox to fix that status quo. And so when thinking about crafting a strong housing strategy, it needs to have policy interventions that fall into the three general categories that we've been talking about of housing supply, housing subsidy, and housing stability. And without policies from all three of these categories, that stool can't stand. But of course, we've also talked about previously how a lot of these categories overlap with one another. There are policies that can fit into all three or two of those categories as well. So stability, what does this mean? This means keeping people housed in affordable, healthy conditions. Typically, conversations in the housing stability policy space focus around tenant protections, but certain policies can apply to homeowners too. Homeowners can oftentimes struggle with property tax payments and maintaining the quality of their housing, especially if they're on a fixed income. And why is housing stability important? The strategies that we've talked about previously as it relates to supply and subsidy are important, especially for affordability, but stability policies are really what will go the furthest to ensure fair and equal treatment of tenants. There are also many, many associated benefits with being able to stay in your housing and not get evicted or pushed out from a community that you're a part of. This includes financial well-being, most of the time because then you're able to hold down a job better if you have stable housing. You have improved physical and mental health and well-being. This is especially acute in children. When children are moved from place to place, that significantly affects their mental and physical health, as well as their educational achievement, because oftentimes moving homes also means moving schools and having that large life interruption during the school year. And then also just generally staying in the same place for a longer period of time oftentimes leads to greater community ties, knowing your neighbors, having those deeper social networks that really make you involved and feel tied to a place, and can also lead to being able to help somebody out if they're in a tight place or you need assistance. So there's many, many associated benefits with this that even become difficult to quantify. And so who does it benefit? It can benefit all tenants when we're talking about anyone who is renting. Those rental facilities policies will help anyone who is a renter, but especially those who are at risk of displacement. And those groups disproportionately tend to be low and moderate income or from historically excluded groups. And so here are the recommended housing strategies that we've been talking about, and these have shifted a little bit every time as we hone in more and more on each one of these categories. So tonight we have finally reached this third category on the right side of stability policies. So to zoom into that, the list on the left is roughly categorized by what we will be able to complete first. So that short, medium, and longer term framework associated with the lighter orange to darker orange. And for the purposes of tonight's discussion, we have broken these recommended strategies into 4 categories. This is also how they were broken down in the staff report. So we have policies, methods to deploy subsidies. So a lot of these strategies tie back into the subsidy discussion that we had last month, different programs that the city could offer, and then also partnerships with external organizations. So to dig first into the policies, one that was referenced before and that we've talked a little bit about previously is to update City Code Chapter 18, rental facilities and landlord-tenant relations. This is the part of code that deals with landlord and tenant rights. So if there were to be any legislative or code changes, it would be through Chapter 18. And as a part of this major process to update Chapter 18, staff intends to engage landlords and tenants in that rewrite process. We want to hear from folks about what is working or what isn't working, or what are the barriers that they are facing. And then, as the city manager mentioned before, we would like to hear from you all tonight about what are the outcomes that you would like to see with this rewrite. We have some potential options here, but of course, feel free to take it in your own direction. Some potential options are to provide more clarity around the responsibilities of tenants, landlords, and the city, better connection between data collection and policies and procedures, more safeguards for tenants, and more opportunities for tenant agency. So we'll go back to those later, but just for you to mull over now as we go through this. And here are the following items that we're currently considering regarding the rewrite. Providing clarification in areas of code that are unclear, considering places of alignment with Maryland, Montgomery County, and the city of Gaithersburg. And then best practices in all of these areas, which I won't necessarily read through here, other than to note that fees encompasses a lot. Fees include, but are not limited to, junk fees, guarantor fees, amenity fees, late fees, technology packages, background check fees, credit check fees. So there are a lot of kinds of fees that we're interested in taking a hard look at, the best practices around regulating those. And number 2 within the policies section here is to create a right of return for redevelopment projects. So when a building is redeveloped, creating a right of return policy would mean that the tenants who were previously living in that building, who have been displaced by its redevelopment or who are at risk of displacement and not being able to afford the new building, would be able to return or stay in their neighborhood by giving priority for new affordable units in that redeveloped building or through other assistance. And so there's a lot of ways a right to return policy could go. It could be incorporated into Chapter 18, but other jurisdictions have worked to achieve a right to return through resolutions, programs, or a combination of both, rather than just changes to local laws. So our staff here within HCD is interested in examining some of that further before we make a more concrete recommendation as to the best path forward that we would recommend there. The next section here is deploying subsidies. So first, we want to develop an affordable housing preservation plan. There are a lot of existing deed-restricted affordable units in the city, as well as a lot of naturally occurring affordable homes, or referred to as NOAA, that could be at risk of redevelopment and losing those naturally occurring affordable homes. So we want to make sure that we understand completely that landscape so that we can be poised to act when needed. And this plan would also be informed by the housing needs assessment that's been discussed at previous work sessions. And so these types of losses can be mitigated through various types of interventions, a lot of times which includes deploying subsidies, but not exclusively. So the second suggestion here is to buy NOAA properties in partnership with RHE and other nonprofits. So for example, think of a site like Scarborough Square where the city partnered with RHE to make sure that they could acquire that property. We used the Housing Opportunities Fund, the HOF, to buy privately owned sites that are at risk of redevelopment and then make them long-term affordable. And this can be paired with the right of first refusal that the city has, as well as the tenant opportunity to purchase laws. And then number 3 here is to preserve deed-restricted affordable housing. So that's housing that is already committed affordable, but a lot of times those deeds or covenants have expiration dates. So for example, the MPDUs that the city has constructed, most of those before 2019 had 30-year affordability covenants. And so some of those affordability covenants for MPDUs are going to begin to expire in the 2030s and continuing after that point. So we want to make sure that when a building's MPDUs are set to expire, that we're able to come in and offer some sort of intervention, whether that be through subsidies or other types of agreements, or seeing if the developer is willing to negotiate to extend those affordability terms. We want to make sure that we're aware of all of those things and have the resources available if needed. So number 4 and 5 here are both strategies that we talked about at the previous work session, so I'm not going to go too far into them today, but definitely wanted to include them because they are important components of deploying subsidies to help with housing stability. Next is programs. So first is to enhance the city's existing home repair rehab program with a focus on climate and environmental performance. Right now, our repair rehab program is funded through the Federal Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. But there are a lot more grant opportunities out there at the federal, state, and county level. That could allow the city to provide more assistance, to expand our program in new and creative ways. So that's something that we're interested in pursuing. Number 2 here is to supplement the state's access to legal counsel for evictions program and partner with local mediation services. So when you are a tenant facing eviction, you are not necessarily provided a legal counsel in that situation. In most places, although recently in Maryland, Maryland provides access to legal counsel for evictions for residents making 50% of the state's median income. And this program has been slowly funded and implemented over the last several years. And the reason why a program like that can be really, really critical for housing stability is that tenants are 2 to 3 times more likely to stay in their home if they have that legal counsel. And as mentioned, since Maryland's program only applies to those making 50% of the state's median income, that doesn't, the city's median income is higher than that. So we could consider ways to supplement that by providing funds to make sure that everyone who is making 50% of the city's median income also has access to those services or beyond. But something like that can provide a lot of housing stability and security that residents facing eviction don't currently have. Next with programs is to pursue partnerships to enforce and affirmatively further fair housing. So Montgomery County does fair housing testing, which is essentially when you can submit 2 applications to a housing provider and see if there is any discrimination, have 2 identical applications but have one factor be different, such as race, and see if they decline one of those applications. And then you can build a case from there that there is housing discrimination happening. There are also complaints that the county receives to its Office of Human Rights about issues of housing discrimination that they investigate. So while the county is already doing that work, it can always be enhanced, and we're interested in talking with the county to pursue partnerships to do more fair housing testing in Rockville, and then also working with appraisers to lessen the appraisal gap. So there's a well-established phenomenon that homes owned by Black, Hispanic, and other historically excluded groups will be appraised for less than they are worth due to racial bias. And so across the country, there are different appraisal organizations that are working to eliminate that gap. So that's something that we're also interested in the cause of fair housing, pursuing partnerships with those organizations. And 4th here is to provide financial empowerment and job training programs. Because low wages are really one of those core drivers behind the housing affordability crisis, along with something like supply. And so while we can try to work towards that, financial empowerment and making sure folks are getting good paying jobs that are stable and can allow them to pay rent in Rockville is also an important strategy. And we've had programs like this in the past. Right now, Bank on Rockville, which you might have been familiar with, is on hiatus due to staffing capacity, but we're interested in considering to revive it or having a similar program focused on financial empowerment, as well as new programs and partnerships that are also focused on job training. And our last section here, partnerships. Number 1, something that we've talked about before, is increasing outreach and education to landlords and tenants. And we're planning to launch that effort in early 2025. And so that will include staff from different departments coming together to to host events, to find strategies that build those relationships and improve education about what tenants' rights are, what rights landlords have, and what services the city can offer to both parties. We're also interested in exploring partnerships with organizations who specialize in engaging renters, because we know that as the city, there's only so much that we can do, and there's a lot of really fantastic organizations that have already built those trust and relationships. And if we can partner with them, then we will be likely able to reach a lot more folks than we would just on our own. Second is to work with state and federal partners to increase tenant protections and stability tools. As you discussed a couple meetings ago, the mayor and council will be supporting this year in Annapolis legislation again for good cause eviction. And that's something that the city could not implement on its own, but is quite important for housing stability and tenant rights. And then, as the mayor and council supported last legislative session, the state has established a new Maryland Office of Landlord-Tenant Affairs. So as that gets up and running, we want to make sure that we're partnering with them to do all that we can together to provide those services to landlords and tenants. Third is to improve and increase partnerships to enhance data and resources. We know that data is power and will help us to make better decisions and to improve our existing programs. And the role that we can really play there is to convene those agencies and organizations that play a role in this housing stability space and in housing in general, to make sure that we have strong programs that are guided by good data, and that we're coordinating client services, because we don't want there to only be one door, or we don't want there to only be all of these separate doors and separate places that you can go for assistance. We want there to be one door and for us all to be connected in the services that we're providing. So as next steps, as directed, we'll bring back final ordinances and programs. We've discussed many dozens of strategies at this point, and each one of those will have their own next steps. But all of that will be based on the feedback received tonight. And here again is the requested feedback. So I recognize that there are a lot of words on this page, but we wanted to make sure that you can see all of it in one place, the full list of strategies related to housing stability that we're recommending, the questions that we're hoping to receive answers to, as well as regarding the Chapter 18 rewrite, those potential options for outcomes. And now I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Would it be possible to keep, yes, let's keep that slide
Yep.
up, just so that we can look at it. I just wanted to note that we appreciate the presentation, all the research. We've been on a journey together through 3 different workshops, and I think all of us have shared we need more housing, we need more affordability, we need more types of housing, and we also need more tenant protection. So we appreciate your help to get us here. I think we can, if we can with the body, just go by each of these sections so that we can maybe first focus on policies and do a go around. Just looking to my colleagues to make sure we're okay with that. But then we'll do deploying subsidies, do a go around for feedback, and then programs and partnerships. Is that okay? All right. So policies, updating Code Chapter 18 and creating right of return for redevelopment projects. I just wanted to note that there are some stability-related items also in 13.5. For example, in our last term, we changed the MPDU limitation where the units expired in about 25 to 30 years. We changed that to 99 years to allow for more stability and people not having to move out when they were seniors. We also already changed the time at which if someone graduates from the income level that they would have 6 months to find a new place, not just 60 or 90 days. So that was something stabilized. So I was surprised not to see 13.5 on here. And that was one of the things I wanted to raise, is like there are some other things that we could do to support stability within that chapter as well. Yes? Okay. I also, I'll leave it there and just see if anyone else has comments on policies for Chapter 18. Go ahead. Councilmember Valeri.
I'm not actually sure if this is appropriate for the policies section. I'm kind of trying to parse this. I have a question and an idea that I put forward to my colleagues. One, I was trying to kind of sort out in my head what the state passed renters' rights bill and how, if at all, it's reflected in our existing code, or what if that would be part of the updating of the code. I presume that would be part of the updating of the code to kind of.
So my understanding is that state law supersedes anything that we do at the local level. So those laws that were passed at the state level are automatically go into effect and are applicable to the city.
Okay.
Just to add to what she said quickly, there are some things that were changed in state law, but need to make their way into landlord-tenant guidelines. For example, and the whole council supported the rent stabilization as written by the state legislator. And one of them is the removal of needing to do 2 months rent for security deposits. But if you go to the landlord-tenant handbook that is currently we're linking to, it still says 2 months. So I just want to make sure that we also, as we do this cleaning process, I know the state is also still working on some things that support that. I mean, that it just went into effect in October. For example, the Tenants' Bill of Rights, when I checked last month, wasn't ready yet. So I just wanted to be on the lookout for that. But there are some things that we can start updating now. Back to you.
Thank you. And that's kind of what I was thinking, because I looked through all the things that what landlords are required to under the state bill, what they're no longer allowed to do. And I just want to make sure across the board that these things are reflected. On a policy idea to put forward to my colleagues, I would be interested to see, as part of a policy, a Rockville Renter Bill of Rights. It would be a mandatory document that would need to be given to anybody who is interested in renting in the city of Rockville, to be given by the landlord or property management company. It should be written in plain, accessible language, translated into Spanish, simplified Chinese, perhaps others upon request. It should include the last 3 rent increases, date and percentage of increase, the last 3 to 5 code violations, date and category, or a link to our new violations list, which I hope that we will start putting on the city website to highlight problematic properties. An itemized list of all fees possible. I know that that's part of our overall strategies, but having that in this all-in-one document so that people can make that decision before signing a lease. Also, if utilities are not included, an estimated monthly cost from the last 12 months for, at minimum, water and electricity. I'd like to kind of start there, because as of right now, we have the landlord tenant handbook, which is great and all, but having all this information at one, before signing a lease, having it all in one place, I think that there is power to that and a usefulness to that I would love to hear what others think about looking at that as a possible policy moving forward.
Before I go to the next person, do you have any comments on that? Okay, all right. I saw Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Van Grack, and then Councilmember Fulton.
Yeah, just really quickly, I do want to just first thank the staff for all of their work. These are really great policy options, and I support all of them. Just a quick point of clarification. On the state level, they did pass a bill that is called rent stabilization, and just a point of clarification, it does not actually stabilize rent. It does stabilize it does lower the deposit, but just wanted to give that point of clarification. And I also think that we should have more transparency, but I recognize that if we are updating Chapter 18, if we are updating Chapter 13.5, that we should have, because a renter's rights piece is essentially like a marketing piece based on the current code. So as we update that code, I think there are ways to share those updates.
Thank you. Councilman Van Greg.
Thank you. And again, to staff, I know that this is not the first time you've come and presented other options to us, and I want to thank you for what you're doing. I think it's clear that we've got to do something about the rental prices in Rockville, and stabilization is a key part of that. I know we're going to be going through these areas, but I kind of want to say at the outset, I think the two areas that I think can do the most broad-based stability actions is in the policy section that we're talking about here, and also in the partnerships. I know we'll get to that, but I just want to kind of give that priority at the outset. I think the policies and what we can do, both what my colleagues, Councilmember Valeri and the mayor talked about, I think is also important. We're talking about what Councilmember Valeri said with these Bill of Rights, disclosures of what a landlord would have to put forward to the renter could be critical. And I want to expand on something that Councilmember Valeri talked about, a requirement of renters to post, requirement of landlords to disclose at the outset, not just what the rental increase was of that particular unit, but also of the building and of what the company does as well. When I proposed that in a meeting with the Renters Alliance, who I know there's a number of members of the Renters Alliance here, and talked with them about different policy positions, there was at least one member of the Renters Alliance said, wow, that type of disclosure could even do better to stabilize rent than a hard caps on rental increases. Why that would be the case is because you're using the market forces for the landlord to be required to disclose what they've done in the marketplace to an incoming renter. Because it's not just about what we're doing to the people who are currently into the rental units, but also to someone, for example, coming out of a different unit or coming out from outside the city or from a shelter into Rockville and wanting to be able to know, is this a particular unit that I can trust with regard to it? So I think what Councilmember Larry was talking about with the Bill of Rights and these open disclosures would be a significant assistance to the rental community in Rockville.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulton.
Yes to what everybody just said. I follow directions here. So the question is, like, do we support this policy update City Code Chapter 18? Like Councilmember Shaw said, that's what's required to get to the Bill of Rights document that Councilmember Larry said, which I support totally. I think out of this policy proposal, the two things that at a high level we need to do is, number one, collect the data we're already supposed to be collecting, right? Like it's the data, the city needs to have the data to make informed policy decisions. So we need to figure out how to do that. Whatever changes are needed to the code or how we organize ourselves, that's what we need to do. And then we need to require transparency and disclosures via these Bill of Rights. So it's the data, and then it's turning around and enforcing some real extreme and comprehensive transparency around how rents are increasing from the policy perspective. I'm very supportive of.
Dr. Miles?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I associate myself with most of the comments of my colleagues. As my colleague did in terms of answering the questions, I do think that we should focus on the policies as outlined there. Specific interest in the junk fee issue. Of note, Section 2961 of the Montgomery County rent stabilization legislation actually outlines a lot of this stuff as well, so it can be used as a model to address this. And more broadly, address stability writ large. I have no problem with these as outlined. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. I won't belabor the point. I agree with my colleagues, especially with Councilmember Larry, that we need more transparency and disclosure, but we do need to update the city code of Chapter 18 first. And with that, I'll let you back.
Thank you. I have a couple of policy things, do you mind? And then I'll turn it back to Councilmember Shaw and Valeri. I wanted to hold back because I wanted to hear what everyone else had to say first, but a couple of specific policy items. I think in terms of the landlord-tenant code specifically, we have seen record heats, and I do want to make sure that we have some of the, and we've also seen in Montgomery County where there have been emergency issues that have had the potential to injure or have injured tenants. And so I want to make sure that is something I think you're gonna have to prioritize all these things, but there's some things that are so critical that at a base level that should happen. So I want to make sure that we're thinking about the emergency rules. I also, we do require heat, but not necessarily air conditioning. And today, if you think about last summer, the multiple 100-degree weather days was really hard. And I think about seniors in particular. I used to live on the 4th floor of a building that did not have AC, and we sometimes didn't have water. And it was really, really hard, especially for people with asthma, people who are elderly. And so I want to make sure we're addressing any of those emergency situations with our policy, because I know it's been a while since this has been updated. So I want to commend this team for your willingness to dive in on this, because I know there's a lot to improve here to make sure we're protecting tenants. I agree with my colleagues, and I've previously shared the fees. I was talking to a resident today about, there was a trash fee, there was a parking fee, there was a pet fee, there was a mail collection fee, and there was one more fee, and I can't even remember, but so something ridiculous. But when I went to that website of that that building, and you click on it, and you can see, here's the rent, and here's the unit size, but it's misleading. I think not only should it be in the lease, but it should be posted on the website, because as you're doing your research to explore what is a viable option, those fees do add up, and it could be $100 to $200, if not more, of fees. So I think that we really need to make sure that is up in front, so people, as they're making their own consumer choices, know right away. I also agree on the transparency on the increases. I know our rental license forms collect that information. I think that should be readily available, just like in any other consumer purchase or something, and someone's entering a long-term contract. Renters should be able to know what is the history of increases in that building. I also think the distressed building status, we don't have a distressed building program. That is something I'm hoping that we can create in the city of Rockville. I know I've been talking about this for some time, and I know that DHCD did this section, not the planning department, so I recognize that. But I wanted to make sure that we bring in our planning and inspections folks to make sure that we also, as we're looking at landlord-tenant code, have a distressed building policy and make that transparent and available, similar to what my colleagues have said, so that people can see. I also think we should, talk about those landlords who are doing well. So I don't know if there's a gold star. I know my colleague has mentioned that in the past, Councilmember Jackson. We should be able to show those people who are doing VRGs or below. So that was some of that piece. And then the other one thing I wanted to recognize is, I wonder if we could also look at providing more grace time for renters, so that they have more. Sometimes 90 days is not a lot of time to determine whether you're going to live somewhere or not. And especially if they have to think about what the rent will be. So I just wanted to look at that as well. I do appreciate that we have done a number of things in terms of grace time in the past. In terms of the MPDU program, specifically for 13.5, I wanted to see, I believe the city attorney had mentioned this before at the federal level. I'm looking at you, sorry to put you on the spot, but I think with some types of federal programs, you can go up in incomes. Like, say you've graduated, you're going to school, you get a higher pay. Once you get in the program, you're allowed to potentially go up to 140%, I believe. I know there's one federal program that's like that. So I wanted to just see if once you get into the MPDU program, is there a way to give them a little more room to make some progress in life without being kicked out? I just have a real heart, and for people who are trying to do the right thing, and then it just puts them out of range. They're not yet making what they could be in a market apartment, but they still need help. And so that's something I wanted to see if we can look at. Another big thing that I think relates to both planning and our landlord-tenant in terms of licenses that these landlords get. Multifamily homes are only inspected 20%. So per year. So it takes 5 years to get through a whole building. What can we do to bring that number down so that it doesn't put the tenant in a tenable situation of having to report issues? I would really like to hear from staff on, could we get closer to 2 or 3 years like we have with the single-family homes. You should not be at a disadvantage because you had a single-family home, at a multifamily home versus a single-family. So that's just a policy input I wanted to see. I agree with my colleagues on we need an updated landlord-tenant handbook. I think right now we refer to the state. We don't have our own, for clarification. And the state also passed a tenant bill of rights, so the two can go hand in hand together. But I do think that once we have our own policies laid with the state's policies, we could have our own landlord-tenant handbook. I've mentioned this in the past, but for renters, they should have an ease in identifying affordable housing for rent. We don't yet have a current list of that. So I'm hoping that we can make that happen. And I will pause there. Councilmember Shaw.
I just wanted to make a point. Although I think the transparency with a Bill of Rights is very important and valuable, the problem, with all due respect, Councilmember Van Grack, is the rent, the cost of rent. And so I think, regardless of us, and we can actually do both as the 7 most powerful people in this city, we can actually do a Bill of Rights and pass rent stabilization. I think, but I think the core problem is truly the cost of rent. And so although I do value the transparency, that is also for incoming renters, not necessarily current renters, because current renters know how much they pay every single month. And so I do think that I do respectfully disagree with your point. Thank you.
Councilmember Valeri.
I just wanted to clarify for staff because I kind of jumped. As Councilmember Fulton says, I don't follow the directions. No, I appreciate, I support updating the city code, of course, and all the relevant parts as well. And 2, creating the right to return for redevelopment, I completely support. Actually, to my colleague, Councilmember Shaw's last point, it's something that I've honestly grappled with, to be totally honest with you. We want to support people who are moving into Rockville. We want to support the people who are living in Rockville. How do you balance the two? The people, if we pass a hard cap tomorrow, first off, it's not going to be implemented tomorrow. It'll be a year plus because, frankly, we don't have the resources that the county has. Even they're kind of slow. It will make it easier for people to stay in the city. So then what happens to the people that want to live in the city? Like, that want to move into the city? Finding that balance, because you're right. Like, this is the legacy of building upon years of zoning that has made it extremely hard, zoning and policies that have made it really hard to build. And frankly, one term of us cannot undo decades of a mindset that is not build. So that is ultimately my challenge. And Councilmember Shaw, you just hit it on the head. And that's my struggle, is because I want everybody to have the best possible housing in living in Rockville, either to remain here or to move in here. And so how do we best achieve that? Again, that's the struggle. But it's the best possible housing too, because I struggle with the county law as well. The county law that really says, market rate places, not so much with capping rent there. We're going to kind of concentrate it just here on buildings that haven't been renovated in a long time and are older than 23 years. So there's some way in between that, I have personally struggled with this. I wanted to share my view on this struggle, and that there is a tension, because you don't want to necessarily completely put the scale on this, flip the scale on the side of people who already live here, but because you want to be welcoming as well. So how do we create that balance, and how do we make sure that everybody, there are so many external factors. I will also put out there that any other external factors that we can address in terms of overall housing costs, the household costs rather. We have not had a meaningful conversation about childcare and the absolutely exorbitant amount that having children puts upon a family. And that is something that we could do something about as well. But we don't have that conversation. And that ends up at the bottom line. If we can look at housing, if we can look at childcare, unfortunately, groceries, we got to look at other factors on that, like federal, but like there has to be I don't know. I just wanted to share that I'm struggling, and thank you, Councilmember Shaw, for kind of poking my brain a little bit on the tension of my struggle.
Thank you. Councilmember Van Grack.
I just wanted to say, actually, Councilmember Shaw, I agree with you 100%, because it's not just about transparency. It's not just about a Bill of Rights. It's about getting the rental prices down in Rockville. And I think throughout all of these, now the third session that we've had, this council has unanimously talked about the importance of bringing down rents in Rockville. It's critical. The question, however, is what do we do and how can we, as a whole, bring the rental prices down through our policies and through our action? Just because there might be one aspect that could potentially bring down part of prices that we may not support does not mean that other policies that we put forward are not having the goal of bringing down rental prices in Rockville. And if you've looked at the specific, I mean, you've done an amazing job. If we go back to the slides of those three legs of what we're trying to do with affordable housing, we've talked about specific policies and instructed staff on specific policies, procedures, and programs that we're going to do that we believe are going to bring down the rental prices as a whole, not just for current renters, but also for people looking to change to their apartments or houses in Rockville, but also people coming into Rockville. So, Councilman Shaw, I agree with you 100%. We've also got to work to bring down the prices in Rockville. It's critical. It's a significant problem here in Rockville. And I think we're really doing a good job, even if we disagree on specific policies.
Councilmember Shaw.
So rent never goes down. It always goes up. Every single month. I'm sorry, every single lease renewal. Rent in Rockville always goes up.
Not in the past.
And, or at least, sometimes you're lucky if it stays the same. But we have to approach this with rent always going up. And so as much as I do support the increase of supply, we need to build more housing. We need to build a lot more housing. The time it takes to build that housing, and then for the time of that housing to be somewhat equal to what folks are paying now, it takes too long. And so we need to do all of these policies. I think there's something like 40 policies. We need to do all of them, plus rent stabilization. We are in the midst of a crisis. We are in the midst of a crisis, and we need to have a crisis mentality, and so we need every single tool in our toolbox. We should not be taking tools out. We should be putting more tools in. And another piece that I think I've been struggling with is that when we're talking about tenant agency, and I appreciate staff for putting this on the slide. When we're talking about tenant agency, that means we are listening to tenants and we are understanding how tenants feel. Tenants know the best about what they need and how we can serve them. And so people have come here in droves pleading with us that they need rent stabilization. And I really think that it's time for us. I know that we had our decision on July 8th, but in all due respect, I believe that was a mistake. And it is not too late. And I think that we really need to listen to tenants and do one of the major important policies in passing rent stabilization. And I respectfully ask my colleagues to join Council Member Miles and I and put this back on the agenda.
Thank you. I wanted to go to other parts of the policy that you have here. I will go, yeah, give me 1 second. One of the things that we discussed, and I know you had it here, but is the algorithms. And so there are companies that I know the Department of Justice, I hope they continue to do that work. We don't know what's going to happen after the election. But I did see Philadelphia passed a rule about not allowing companies to use algorithms to superficially price fix in a way. And so I wanted to see if that is something that could be accelerated to put forth in the city of Rockville, so that we're not having, you look sometimes and people, there's a similar price. We've heard that from renters, right? How are they getting that? And are they using artificial algorithms from someone several states over to say this is worth that, when they're really not thinking about that building has so many more amenities than the other building. So I really am concerned about where that is going, and the proliferation of the use of algorithms to determine rent prices and to use that as a rationale for some of the increases that have been going on. Frankly, even if the county allows increases by 6% every year, that is still a lot. It's higher than what Rockville has seen historically in our history. When we look back by the data that you showed us for the decades of years, has not been as high. So I want to make sure that we really look at that, what other cities are doing in terms of the algorithms, and maybe see if that can be pulled up a little higher. I also really like your discussion about prioritization for those who've been displaced if there is redevelopment. I wanted to also add, you, in the presentation, I know in the brief book, there are some Molly-priced dwelling units that are going to expire for people because they were probably in the 30-year and now their time is up. I wonder if we can also look at displacement from that lens as well, so that those people might have the first ability for the new opening. We actually have several new housing projects that we're trying to move forward in the city of Rockville to allow people to have access to be on that list earlier, so that we're taking care of residents who might be displaced by that age out. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a proposal and a statement. The proposal is, I'm curious among our colleagues if there's anybody who doesn't support all the stuff that's on the screen. Perhaps that'd be more efficient use. Like if there are things that we need to actually debate upon, great. But if not, that's just a recommendation. The statement, I just wanted to associate myself with the comments of my colleague, Councilmember Shaw. It's obvious. I've been on both sides of this issue. Back in July of last year, previous term, I associate myself and my colleagues a letter to the county against rent stabilization. I was wrong. I should have known better. A former renter who had to make some decisions about how I was going to get to work in Baltimore, because I couldn't afford the rent increase. So I had to give up my parking spot and bike to work in Baltimore, past boarded up houses. Never had a problem, but nobody should have to make that decision. I do find it odd that we talk about stability of housing without talking about rent stabilization. Now, it's not that rent stabilization is a fix, is a silver bullet. It's one of many tools that will help address an issue for folks who are facing the inability to pay rents right now. I think it's one of many tools, and it's not a perfect tool, but we have seen that jurisdictions around us, DC, recently passed in Montgomery County, also Prince George's County, and other larger jurisdictions that do it in different ways. It hasn't been perfect, but it's helped a few people stay in their homes. I have classmates that, for example, grew up in rent control housing in Brooklyn, New York City. So I do regret that we haven't been able to keep it on here. I hope that others would join us in at least having a discussion on it. But I just want to put that out there. And again, the recommendation and a statement, that's all.
Thank you to staff and other colleagues. Are there any other questions on this section?
Sorry, on the policy section? I don't believe so. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Does anyone have any comments on deploying subsidies? Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think subsidies can help. I think it kind of ties back to a larger issue of like a housing opportunities fund and to what extent we want to make it like a line item in a budget, which is a policy decision that, we'll have to discuss. I think jurisdictions of our size, we've thankfully not had to raise property taxes in, 20 years or so. And I'm not saying that we necessarily will have to. I think it just comes down to making policy decisions about if there are to be subsidies, where would they come from? That's certainly what like finances input on that. So I support them in principle. I'm just, I want to find a way to fund them in perpetuity with a goal of, using all the strategies outlined that staff has brought before us to hopefully make subsidies a non-issue, that they won't be needed, right? But until we get to that point, it's about keeping folks housed. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Van Grack and then Councilmember Shaw.
I'll just be brief. I support what my Councilmember Miles was talking about. I think subsidies can be helpful. I think they've got to be balanced with what finances we have available. And so on that endeavor, if we're going to be instituting subsidies, it should be to the extent that we can financially afford to do so, and that we're helping the broadest amount of renters or those who are potentially losing housing as we can. I know there's the emergency housing assistance funds that we've got, some potential being able to identify with the housing preservation plan, but the broader amount of our residents that we can help with subsidies, presuming there's a limited amount, would be a beneficial direction to go.
Councilmember Shaw.
So I do like the idea of having a fund to help to preserve particularly older homes or older housing. And for the property owners that are market-based property owners or profit-seeking property owners, what safeguard is there to prevent those property owners, like say we do have this fund, what safeguards are there to prevent property owners from increasing rent despite accepting public money to help to preserve the housing in the absence of rent stabilization?
When we provide subsidy to a project, we can put a deed restriction on it. So essentially would sit as like a silent second on either the property owned by a landlord or on the mortgage holder. And then they would have to comply with certain rules that we would, strings attached.
Like a rent cap?
Presumably.
Thank you. For last term, we worked on using the right of first refusal. We actually saved many apartments through Scarborough. I think we increased that affordable housing supply of RHE by 31%. We did need to have that Housing Opportunity Fund to help seed that funding, and we also need the collaboration of the county as well as our pilot. I know that we worked with the county last term to try and change the policy so that Rockville will be included. But I think we might also want to have a protocol so that we're evaluating right of first refusal opportunities to determine what is a good approach for us. I know that sometimes there can be several that come up at once, and the decision making is very quick. I think it's like 90 days or so. It's very short. So we need to just be in a position to be ready and to what foundation and guidelines are we basing those decisions to make that purchase, along with Rockville Housing Enterprises. So I wanted to at least note that. I certainly support everything that my colleagues have shared in terms of these programs that you've listed here, and looking at the affordability preservation plan, as well as preserving deed-restricted affordable housing. I will just note that some of the NOAA properties, natural occurring affordable, do have some quality of housing issues. The city has had to step in on some of them to help support through CDBG, Community Development Block Grant money, to help support and upgrade those facilities. One of the biggest complaints we get are, and I know I've seen a lot of them, are infestation and quality of housing issues. So I just wanted to make sure that we are doing our work to make sure residents have a safe, quality place to live. Councilmember Valeri.
All right. So on the actual programs, subsidies. Excuse me. It's the programs for subsidies in my head. I'm more than okay with all of those. And I think that we should be doing that at any rate. But on generally how to fund subsidies in a targeted way as we build more of a supply and as we implement things, to Councilmember Dr. Miles' point, the city of Rockville has not increased its property tax rate since 1995. Many other jurisdictions, I think that there was a person from Tacoma Park. Tacoma Park actually raised their taxes recently. And I think that there is a sense, a collective goodwill to a modest property tax increase that could be used to, and I know I'm not going to be super popular saying this, but I don't care, because I think that we have to have that conversation at some point, right? So property owners, again, it would be based on assessed valuation. I think that that might be something to consider. And that if that is the mechanism that need be, then let's have that discussion as well.
Councilmember Shaw.
I also wanted to mention our approach in terms of housing has, and particularly for renters and those that are working in middle income, really don't have much of a program until you are in dire need and you need REAP, and that's emergency assistance. That's a rental emergency assistance program. And one of the issues I'm struggling with is, although that is a lifeline and we need that, and that's very important, and I know the staff is going to do a really great job on revising that program. I think in the absence of rent stabilization, we are actually spending more taxpayer money with just simply focusing on the emergency portion instead of ensuring that people are not in the eviction system to begin with. Spending a lot of time in rent court, I've seen a lot of people get evicted for what would be illegal in the county. And so these folks also have to then apply for rental assistance, which is taxpayer money. So a great way to save taxpayer money would also be passing rent stabilization.
Thank you. I meant to mention one other thing. The county does allow higher incomes for their Molly Price dwelling unit program, and ours is lower. Do you know, is there a reason for that?
So with the county, for high-rise construction, they go up to 70% of the area median income. With our program, you can go up to 120%, but we haven't had any new development since that part of the code went into effect. So that hasn't necessarily been used yet, but you could theoretically go up higher than the county.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And I know that there's some new projects coming. Just because I want to make, for that like one bedroom, for example, I was one single person household. I was just looking at the income limits, and some people are just like 5,000 off. So I wanted to see if there's any way that we could increase that all along the chain. Okay, thank you. Programs, I'm just going to open that up. That relates to rehab, state and legal counsel for evictions, pursuing partnerships, and providing financial empowerment and job training. You mentioned the Bank on Rockville financial literacy. That will be coming back to us potentially in the spring. Is that right? I know that we funded that with ARPA.
If we can staff up the way we're requesting, then yes, we can get it going in the spring.
Okay, all right, thank you. Colleagues, any other comments on this section? Councilman Van Grack.
I would just say that I like almost all the these programs that you've selected. I would have a concern with regard to the supplementing the state's access to legal counsel. I fully support, what the state is doing. To the extent they might need either assistance, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend or advise the city at least providing the legal counsel directly to tenants in some manner. I don't know if we're talking about some type of supplement to what the state's doing or assistance, but I don't know if you want to comment on exactly what your proposal would be there.
Sure. So the vision there would be to partner with other organizations that are providing that legal assistance. So what the state does is they partner with like Maryland Legal Aid or CASA, I believe. So other organizations that have the attorneys who are able to provide that counsel. The state is not necessarily providing those attorneys directly.
Gotcha. So, I mean, in that context, the extent we can help people with legal counsel, I think that's a good program. Okay.
Gotcha.
And I think the county also funds, or at least they were giving grants to the Renters Alliance as well. And since we're part of the county, I wonder, I know that they've helped Rockville residents in the past.
Yes, and I confirmed with them today that they are able to assist Rockville residents using this grant funding as well.
Okay. And I know you talked about evictions and fair housing. I just want to also restate that the council has voted to support just cause legislation at the state level. So we are doing that in our state outreach. Councilmember Fulton.
So just one thought on the program section. I really appreciate that number 4 talks about sort of the ability to pay, increasing ability to pay aspects of stability. I think that it's real. And also, when we go there, if we're going to start addressing that side of the equation, there's a whole lot more. I think Councilmember Valeri said, like, childcare, transportation issues, the number of jobs in the city. Like, there's all sorts of things we could do there. So as long as we're, like, acknowledging that, like, that's just taking one small piece of the ability to pay side, I think it's well worth doing. And then only since the mayor brought it up, I think it's under partnerships, but I'll take the opportunity to say that advocacy for just cause eviction, I think we did vote in favor of it, and we should be following it and doing everything we can to help make that go through. I think that is important. I think that's whichever number that falls under, partnership number 2 or whatever, but I'll offer it.
Okay. All right. Any questions on programs? Okay. Next, we're moving to partnerships. Increasing outreach and education to landlords and tenants, work with state and federal partners, and improve and increase partnerships to enhance data and resources. I was also thinking that, this part of this could also, goes towards the supply side, but just making sure that we're working with, bringing all partners together that work on affordable housing, like minor MHP. I know that there's a WMATA opportunity that we could explore if we have a partner, activating town center apartments with Housing Opportunities Commission. That is a vacant building with 100 units that could be housing people who need housing and be focused on affordability, lower price rents. I think we need to really push on that. I also just wanted to note, in terms of the landlord-renter outreach, I totally agree. We need to be talking to renters more. I appreciate everyone here sharing their stories. There are people who have emailed me that I followed up with and helped. I've also called property managers myself. When I hear of certain issues, I intend to do a few more following the meeting today. I was actively taking some notes. But I also think when someone comes in to the city of Rockville, we have seen a challenge, as some of the people have testified. Someone states over, buys a building, and they don't necessarily have a connection to the community. We have to rally those folks and say, here's how you operate, and here's the culture of how we work with our residents in Rockville. There was a building that was bought in Rockville, I won't name which one, but when they first got in, they didn't even realize they had to renew their rental licenses, and we found out through a resident that they hadn't yet. We knew that there was another building that, just were doing things that were outside of our guidelines. And also just, acquainting them to the culture of what we expect and how they're going to treat tenants, or their licenses won't be renewed. So I think that kind of annual discussion, and also hearing from them what are the challenges that are being experienced both by renters and landlords, is something that we need to have a more active and open conversation about. I know during COVID, I pushed to start that, but there was a gap between COVID and now. And I think it's really needed. As my colleagues have said, there's an emergency now to make sure we're talking and really listening more. Councilmember Shaw.
I really appreciate your point, Madam Mayor. I also just want to make sure that when we do our outreach, as the first and only tenant on this body, I did go to the landlord and tenant webinar. I think it was last year. It was like in the middle of the day. I was on there with also some other landlords. The only way I could speak is like through the chat. And I think that we are working on ways to better conduct our outreach and more innovative ways. Regardless, however, as you know, regardless of how innovative those ways are, this community engagement, especially if we're talking about building tenant agency, doesn't really mean much if we're not listening to tenants. And so I think it's really important. We have tons of tenants here asking us, again, for what they need. And so this community engagement is just performative if we are not actually listening and then doing what tenants are asking us to do.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. So shifting topics a little bit on the subject of partnerships. This is really related to common ownership communities. And so I was thinking about partnerships, and there's a commission on common ownership properties that are communities in the county. And I would be interested to know what they have done for Rockville since we opted into their authority. We opted in 2016, and there's been no reports. I think Kailersburg recently had a report because they were really interested in what they're getting for the money that they charge these common ownership communities. So I would be really interested to know what Rockville gets for the money that we put into the common ownership communities, and whether or not we should take that back. So that's a partnership that I really would like to see us explore what we get, and whether we should go forward with common ownership properties or communities, the agency, or whether we should take it back inside Rockville.
I fully support that exploration. I know that's been an issue, and you made me think of another issue that's adjacent. But during drop-in, I met with a resident who is not a property owner and not a tenant. We have several senior living facilities, and some of them have independent living. And it's really tough because it's not clear on who is protecting them. This particular entity had someone, it's not Rockville water, so I'll just note that, but they had sewage coming into their units, and there's been a couple of them that have been happening. And I've heard some other residents who have had issues with, being on the in-between, not quite protected by, the laws for tenants, and then also not having the agency in terms of being able to change their property as an owner. So I see that as a challenge of something that we have to think about, because they need our protection too. They're vulnerable in terms of sometimes they have different disabilities. People have dementia, Alzheimer's, also seniors who are living in those communities. And I just want to make sure that we're thinking about those as we're building this program as well. All right, any other comments or questions for you to us? Okay. Colleagues, anything else?
Oh, sorry, Jen.
All right.
I suppose for the outcomes for the Chapter 18 rewrite, Would love to have any direction on those outcomes that you would like to see.
I have marked it up myself, so I would be happy to share that. I mean, there's too many details to go through tonight. Perhaps we can send those to you to just take a look at. Is that what you mean by that?
No, like, we're thinking more broad outcomes that you guys, are goals of a Chapter 18 rewrite, not specific line by line, redlining of the chapter, but more specifically as a body, kind of what is the direction, and are these things that we've put in here as potential options, do they kind of speak to your desires for that rewrite?
And Mayor, if I could just add, if the potential options that you see there sound reasonable, then we'd come back at a separate work session just to talk about Chapter 18.
Yeah, I think I will say for myself, these make sense. I know I've mentioned some other things in addition to what's here. So I want to make sure we've captured the notes on that as well. I know some of my colleagues have as well. But I think your other sheet, your other slide has much more detail on Chapter 18 as well. So I think all of us supported that. Okay. Councilmember Shaw.
Just with the data piece, I just want to make sure that we are following 10-21 and looking at our process and the way that we advance equity. So if there was a way to disaggregate data by demographics like race, that would also be helpful. I don't know if that is being considered here with that point, but I would just want to add that.
Councilmember Valeri.
I presume that we're just talking about the update and not about adding in anything at this point to Chapter 18. Am I correct in that?
So what we're talking about here is not necessarily what would be considered for the line by line code changes to Chapter 18, but when taking that endeavor of a rewrite, what is the goal of doing that? We have these potential options here about clarity of responsibilities, more safeguards for tenants. There's many different goals or outcomes that we could have with this rewrite. And these are the ones that we think that make sense and we would recommend. But we would love to hear from you about going into this big process of updating Chapter 18. What is really the goal that you all have as a body?
Gotcha. That's actually extremely helpful. Sorry, and then I'll defer to my colleague. I think that clarity is always helpful. I think transparency is even better. And hand in hand with the transparency would be more safeguards as well. Oops.
Councilmember Fulton.
I think you basically said what I was about to say. So just to be super precise, yes, all of these potential options I think you heard support for. I think you also heard support for conceptually, not just clarity and responsibilities, but something proactive, like the Bill of Rights that Councilmember Valeri shared. I don't know that there's anything in there now, so that would be something that's more than just providing clarity. It's an affirmative obligation that doesn't currently exist. So I wanted to be.
Thank you. I was going to say, yeah, according to state law, once they have it, which they don't yet, the Bill of Rights must be included with the lease. It just hasn't been developed yet by the state, and we'll have to align with theirs.
Sorry, can I?
Councilmember Fulton, go again.
Now I'm being super yes to all that, and also it's the affirmative disclosures, right? That we talked about. So I think we've talked about a Bill of Rights that Councilmember Valeri added in obligations on landlords to provide some comprehensive disclosures about past rent. And so if you're looking for things that are new and not there beyond providing clarity in the data, I think that was one thing.
Councilmember Van Graag.
And to the extent you need clarity, I agree with everything there. Every one of the potential options, as well as the enhanced options that we were discussing here today, to the extent that clarity is at all blurry, let's make it clear.
Can I ask, what is the potential timeline for this?
Mayor, there's 43 different strategies we've talked to.
I mean, just on landlord-tenant.
That would be one of the higher priorities for us.
Okay.
So.
And my understanding is also that you're going to go away with all the feedback you've heard so far. We're going to pull together a housing plan, an initiative, right? That we can, and you'll prioritize the items with the impacts and looking at disparities and other factors.
Yes, I would call it more of a dashboard than anything else with all the different strategies and then have lines of when we think we might be able to bring this back to the council.
Okay, and then we will do a final review and sign off on that, and then on all of them, in terms of the prioritization?
I was not going to bring back the prioritization just because there's 43. There's going to be multiple we're working on at the same time. If there's
Sounds good.
something when I send you guys the dashboard that you don't like what you see, then I would appreciate feedback.
I think that this is part of a large umbrella initiative that we should name and make sure it's transparent to the public on what we're working on and what we're hoping to get to.
Yep, it'll be outward facing, and thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, and then I also did not hear anything about 13.5 in the near future, which was on when DHCD in the past had told us that they were updating 13.5. So I just want to get a sense of where that is.
That is also
plan.
higher up in the priority schedule of working on that.
Okay, so
That's
just because it's not written here doesn't mean that it's not going to happen.
correct. You agree?
Thank you. Councilmember Valeri.
Sometimes I'm just gonna go like this, but I don't want to be too aggressive. I am wondering where in all this our discussion, and this might be more of a Mr. Mihalik question than a Ms. Lyons and Mr. Trout question. Our discussion on renovating, for lack of a better term, the MPDU program.
That's what I just asked.
Wait, did I just miss that?
Yeah.
Why am I always, I hear it in my head and not the,
We were
I
so excited to
apologize.
speak.
And that was
No,
discussed
no,
during
I
the-
totally missed that. I totally
The
missed that.
housing supply work session, we went through MPDUs and the chapter 13.5 rewrite. So it is in that big list, and within the supply section, it's one that cuts across a lot of these different categories. It's towards the top.
Okay, cool. Okay, you can just ignore me from now on.
I would just note there are things to look at within that policy that are not just supply related, but protection related as well. Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Jackson, are you raising your hand?
I wasn't. Thank you, Mayor. I guess just the opportunity to say that I agree with my colleagues. And just to reiterate, we talked a lot about tenants, but I think that homeowners assistance is really important as well. So I would be remiss not to say, don't forget about homeowners assistance, especially, when we talk about people's situations changing, people that are aging in place or mobility challenge, maybe disabled, or even people that have lost their jobs. Everybody has a different story. But homeowners are not just uniformly well off. They could be struggling. So when we're looking at programs and for tenants and renters, and we should be, but we should not forget about homeowners and the especially vulnerable that are out there in Rockville as well.
Thank you. I fully support that. Councilmember Shaw.
And I think under Councilmember Jackson's point, enhance the city's home repair and rehab, that's for particularly cost burden homeowners, right?
That's right.
Yes, that's for low and moderate income homeowners.
Yes, and I think some of that comes through the community development block grant funding.
Yes,
That is-
currently that program
yeah.
is funded through CDBG.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your time, and I know this was a long journey, and I appreciate all the testimony as well. Okay. We're now moving to mock agenda. I know we had a meeting this morning. Does anyone have any other changes? And Mr. Mihalik, do you want to just note the mock agenda is different than what is posted, I believe. Isn't that right? Like there's two things that have been moved. You updated it? Okay, fantastic. Anybody have any comments here? All right, we're good. Old new business. I just wanted to share well, first I wanted to thank the council for helping with the testimony for the Board of Education to advocate for our schools. We do have some new Board of Education members to get to know. Some of us know them, but I think just officially from the city of Rockville, congratulating them, as well as our new senator. I think those relationships are critical for one, having strong schools, but also on the federal side for getting federal funding. So I wanted to see if we might send a congratulatory letter and say we're willing and wanting to work with you. I think that's always good outreach when we have new people who may not know how we work.
We're happy to provide letters. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Signed by all council members. So.
Okay. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just remembered, Ms. Moran had, I guess, testimony before the state legislature. I'd like to hear how that went if we could.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Thank you. I hope it went well. I had 5 minutes, and I did my darn best to well capture the mayor and council's wonderful 2025 state legislative priorities. So I started with the focus areas and then ended up with the bond bills. I even made a plug for the District 17 delegation, just thanking them for the great tour and that we appreciated all their support. And so it seemed to go well, and at the end of the panel, they asked if there were any questions, and there were none. So I was pleased to have that opportunity, and I think the delegation heard and know the robust program of the Mayor and Council of Rockville. So thank you.
Thank you. I will just also add thank you to Ms. Moran and your team for helping to schedule the tours with our delegation for the Talbot Center, as well as Elwood Smith. They were both very, very favorable. I think they really loved the idea of removing a defunct water tower and creating a play space, particularly that community has a large multifamily population, and they don't have access to the parks and amenities that some other parts of the city does. So I think that is a huge equity opportunity. So I'm hopeful that we can move forward in supporting that and get them to help us with that program.
Thank you, and appreciate your participation as well as Councilmember Van Grax. I think it was a good day.
Councilmember Valeri.
It would help if I had my microphone on. This came to me by a message by a resident, and I'm actually glad Ms. Moran is at the mic, but I'm happy to share more information with my colleagues as well. But Delegate Vaughn has twice submitted a suitable seating law in the Maryland General Assembly. It's also known as a right to sit law. It has not moved in the General Assembly, but essentially it would require employers to provide seating options for all employees. So we're looking at people like in retail or grocery stores, or quite frankly, a myriad of other ways. While it's been defeated on the Maryland General Assembly level, there's been several municipalities that have passed their own ordinance. Ann Arbor most recently, I think Portland did as well. I'm happy to share the information with my colleagues, but I just wanted to kind of throw it out there as something I was going to share and something I've been thinking about that I think would be a really good policy to look at, perhaps enacting in Rockville.
I'm open to getting more information.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm seeing everyone says yes. Okay. One last thing, just for the public's awareness, our chief of police's last day will be on Friday. We will miss him dearly. And there is a reception that will be held on Thursday at 5 at City Hall. So just wanted to mention that. Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Shaw.
I move to adjourn.
Councilmember Valeri.
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, thank you. Have a great evening.